Okay, we're going to get started here. I'd like to call Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing for Monday, January 10th, 2022. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Kurtz.
Here.
Mr. Strollo. Mr. Natale, I'm here. Mr. Tedisco. Here. Mr. Dawson. Mr. Carderas.
Here.
Mr. Selmont.
Here.
Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Mr. Mercado.
Here.
Ms. Downs. Ms. Blake.
Here.
Mr. Hilsinger. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Will the commission public please join me in the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to start off tonight by welcoming our new town planner, Mr. Michael Glidden. Well, welcome to Cheshire, and hope we have a long and prosperous relationship. Okay, moving forward to business. Number one, the zone maps change petition, Mark Florenza and Associates LLC, 802 South Main Street. Can we hear the call for that, please?
The continuation of the zone map change petition of Mark Florenza and Associates LLC, care of James J. Perito Esquire, 265 Church Street, Suite 802, New Haven, Connecticut, 06510, to change the zone from a portion of an R40 parcel to R20A, property located at 802 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, 06410, as generally shown on Assessor's Map number 78, lot number 114, in an R20A partial and R40 partial zones. Property description available for review in the planning office, filed in the town clerk's office.
Thank you. And representing the applicant tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair. For the record, James Perito from Halloran Stage. I'm the attorney for the applicant on this zone change. This is the continuation of the hearing from last month, and there was a fair amount of testimony at that point. And there's a few questions that have been raised by both members of the commission and the public. And I submitted this afternoon a supplement to our application, which I believe addressed those questions, which I'll briefly go over. With us again tonight is Mr. Florenza, who is the developer here in this case. Also is Ryan McClary, who is here from our engineering firm. And also with us is Jeff Bloom, who's representing the owner of the property. I'd like to take a couple minutes and say a few things. So as you know, the property is currently zoned in the front portion along South Main as R20A, and the rear portion is R40. Our application seeks to rezone the rear R40 area, which is approximately 0.452 acres, to the R20A. So we have a cohesive development plan that can be brought forward. Your only issue before you is the zone change. There's no plan in front of you. One of the questions that was raised at the public hearing last time, one of the neighbors suggested rezoning the rear portion to R20. From a planning and comprehensive plan perspective, this would create an isolated area of R20. There's no abutting R20 property zones on our side of the street. It also would most likely be considered spot zoning, which is prohibited by the Connecticut court decisions, and it's really not a viable option. The second point that was raised was this question of whether or not it was sort of common knowledge that the parcel was bifurcated. So I took some time and I went to the town's website and the GIS site, and I've attached to our supplement the assessor's card. When you go to the assessor's card, it actually lists, and if you search for 802 South Main, it lists this property as being an R20A zone. There's no mention of R40. When you go to the GIS map and you search for 802 South Main, and it shows you the map, and it shows you the entire parcel like we've submitted, and you click on the 802, the little pop-up box that comes up, which this says who's the owner and the address, and then it says zoning, and it says R20A. There's no mention of R40. And the reason why I raised that is that when we were initially looking at this property, the former town planner and both the owner, everyone's impression was that it was an R20A, that it was not a bifurcated zone like this. So that was the assumption. There was a question of whether or not we're under contract with anyone, any of the other neighbors for any sale or sort of a putting together other parcels. There's been no conversations with any other neighbors. We're not talking to any of the commercial properties to the south. We submitted a traffic analysis, which I believe demonstrates that the zone change, which would in theory allow up to 14 units as opposed to 8 units, would result in traffic amounts where there'd be no more than 2 more cars at the peak AM and PM times. And that was, I'll have Ryan come up and review that shortly. But there is really no real impact in any traffic in the difference between what we could do with the existing parcel as zoned or with the new zoning put in place. Lastly, well, it's the applicant's intention to seek a development plan that preserves the existing house and incorporate it into that plan. There was a couple of references to the house being historic, and both my office and Ryan's office checked with the State of Connecticut Registry of Historic Sites and Structures, and specifically this property is not listed there. We recognize that in the comprehensive plan of development and to the town that has historic nature to the area. And it is our intention to try to incorporate that, but from a technical matter, it's not on the state registry. So for those reasons, we would ask that you consider the entire application and consider granting it. At this point, I'll have Ryan come up and just go over the traffic report very quickly.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Ryan McAvoy. I'm a licensed professional engineer with SLR Consulting. And just, I'm going to be very brief. At the previous meeting, Attorney Cecina Venzia noted that with any zone change, you're able to consider potential traffic impacts associated with the zone change. And since we made it clear during the initial presentation, both to this commission and to our meeting with the neighbors about Mr. Forlenza's hope at some point for this property is to develop it under multifamily housing or the infill provisions. We did look at the Institute of Traffic Engineers data for similar style apartments or units like this. And we compared what the property could theoretically allow for today, as noted in Mr. Volker's staff report from last month, is that the portion that's R28 today could support, again, by special permit, theoretically 8 dwelling units, and the zone change would allow for up to 14. And based on the statistical analysis, statistical studies by the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, the 8 dwelling unit configuration or the 8 dwelling unit scenario would only have a total of 3 trips in the peak AM hour, and the 14 units would have 5 trips in the peak AM hour. So there's really only a delta of 2 under that circumstance, or 1 additional trip every 30 minutes. Similarly, in the afternoon, we found similar relationship with a total of 7 trips in the peak hour under the 14 unit scenario and 5 on the 8 unit scenario. So really a very nominal difference in traffic generated from the site during the AM and PM peak hour under either 14 or 8 unit situation. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Bowman, hi, I'm Mr. McAvoy.
Ryan, you're just reading this report. Are you a traffic engineer?
No, David Sullivan of our office prepared this, and he it's based on his
Okay,
analysis.
so you're just presenting it then.
That's right.
So if we had any questions of him, he's not here to answer them.
He's not, but I'd be happy to make an attempt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. At this point, we'd like to have Mr. Jeff Bloom come up and give a short presentation.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you very much for having this opportunity, having the opportunity to just make a few comments.
Just need you to give your name and address for the record. Our stenographer is not here. She's at home watching on YouTube, but if you could
I'm happy to present that. as
and
well.
speak up too, if you could, please.
Speaking as
I know these are not fun, but
so my name is Jeffrey Blum, and I live at 802 South Main Street in Cheshire, property that we're discussing right now. My wife, Mary Pace Blum, is here with me as well. She's sitting in the back. She's the daughter of the owner of the property, Patricia Pace, my mother-in-law. So I'm here representing my mother-in-law, who's 91 years old, has lived here in Cheshire as a very active community member for over 60 years. She's had this home, which she's lived in for 60 years. And I just wanted to present to the committee a little bit of history. You know, Patricia was known as Pat Pace. Most people in town knew her. She was a very friendly and active member of the community, actually served on some committees here in town to help the environment here in Cheshire. She was head nurse at the state prison here in town and nurse at Cheshire Academy here in town. By way of history, Pat was approached when Stonegate development was first being talked about and planned. And Mr. Bowman had approached her to sell a piece of her property so that Stonegate could be able to produce the number of units that it was looking to produce in that development. Pat, being a good neighbor, was very accommodating and helpful in terms of providing those additional pieces of land so that that project could be implemented. The family went through, obviously, what anyone goes through when there's a development put in beside you, the noise and obstruction of just the building. But, that was not an issue for her because she felt like she was doing the right thing for the town. I want to make comment about this past June 2021, the family was approached by members of the Stonegate Association, Homeowners Association, where they were interested in purchasing a parcel of the land because they knew that there was a potential for a development. The house was up for sale. Members of the community had chatted with our family, and we were very transparent about what the interests were. We were looking to maximize the value of the property. My mother-in-law, as I said, is 91, in memory care, and has tremendous expenses. And as we were approached, we were told that they were interested in being able to create more of a buffer, knowing that there would probably be a development that would go in. The family chatted about that request, and the family decided to accommodate, being a good neighbor. Well, we sold off that little piece of property. We were approached by another abutter, part of the association, looking for the same thing. However, we couldn't accommodate only because we had been presented with discussions of an offer for the property. So we were hoping that, being neighborly, that there would be in-kind treatment presented to Pat as well. So we only ended up selling one little piece off to them to create a buffer zone. We come to the present situation that we're in, and we're just hoping that you as a committee will have consideration for her as an elder person in the community who's been an active member of the community for a long time, and we're looking for a positive indication of your approval for this zoning change. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience on that. I think the record also, in addition to some of the property history and the family history, I think there's plenty of evidence in the record to support a change of the zone. It makes good planning. It's more cohesive in terms of the designation of the zones in the area here, and it fits your comprehensive plan of development, as we discussed at the last meeting. We'd be happy to answer any other questions. We would like to, if there is other public comment, we'd like to reserve a few moments to rebut anything that we feel is necessary to do so. So Again, thank you for your patience. Appreciate it.
Okay. Mr. Natale.
Okay, so at the last meeting, and I think I heard a little bit about that tonight, the plan is to leave the current house where it is.
The attempt is to leave not the entire structure, because there's a carriage house. You'd have to remove the carriage house to the right, the south part, so you can have access to the back. But the intention would be try to incorporate the existing house into a development plan. Yes.
So with the existing house incorporated, I take it building wouldn't take place in front, it would take place in back?
I'm sorry.
Again, Ryan McAvoy for the record, we haven't looked into in significant detail on that, but it's possible there'd be some units in the front because the placement of the building is more or less centered in the property, so there could be some construction in the front. Not certain on that.
And you're guesstimating that how many units can you fit in there?
Well, we believe we can fit 14 if the entirety of the parcel is zoned R20A.
And that's with leaving the house and getting rid of the carriage house?
Yeah, we believe we can make that happen.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Mr. Bowman.
I just want to clarify that you're claiming that that is now an R20 piece and it's misrepresented on the map as an R40 piece?
When you look at the GIS map and you click
I
on,
want your opinion. I don't care what the maps say. I want
Okay.
your opinion.
okay, no, I think that the reason why we're here asking for you to make the zone change is that the property is bifurcated between an R20A on the west side
Yep.
abutting the South Main, and then R40 to the rear. If you're confused about the R20, it was that at the last hearing, someone said, shouldn't it all be the back piece rezoned to R20, not R20A? And there's no abutting R20 right there.
This,
If I could add into that.
I'd like to ask a few more questions, Ryan. Thank you. This piece put together was a combination of several pieces? The Stonegate piece. So it was a piece that your mother-in-law sold. It was a piece from the Elliott family.
Okay.
It was a piece from Stop and Shop. I would like to see what all those pieces were zoned prior to the PRD.
I think Ryan could actually answer that.
Okay, well,
So I'd like to just, if you don't mind, Matt, just real quick, I just want to go back to the reason why we're here. And the reason why we brought up the zoning designation, when you look at the property card and the GIS, is that actually, at Mr. Forlentz's behalf, started looking into the history to make sure, because of the discrepancy between what you have on the map and what you have on the property card. And I found, looking back at our old Stonegate files, because we represented the developers for that property as well, that what's available in the town records doesn't reflect what was there previously. So we actually pointed out to Bill through the Stonegate maps and things of that nature that there was a bifurcation of the property, and he was able to confirm that since Stonegate, there's been no other zone change activity in the property. So it was something that we kind of discovered despite what was available in town records, but we just wanted to just clarify that was the part of the confusion between the property owner and the developer initially, and in fact, the town. But with respect to your question, Matt, the second question is that, yes, Stonegate was a combination of several different properties, and the zoning designation of Stonegate before it got developed into the ARPRD district was R20A along Route 10 along Highland Avenue, and then R40 to the rear. And the ARPRD is allowed to be applied in either R20A or R40 zones.
so was the Pace piece, so that property line prior to the zone change to PRD was R40 or R20?
This graphic actually represents the zoning map prior to Stonegate. So the R20A line is shown here in this
dashed, you guys probably can't see it, is shown here in this dashed line. That's the separation between the R20A along the road, which is also how the properties to the north, including the older houses between Higgins and our site were previously. And what's shown here in green was the portion of the Pace property that was R40. Okay, so the majority of the Pace property was sold into the Stonegate development as part of phase 2. And what was left is only a sliver or slice that you see here in green. So that's sort of the history as to how it got to where it is today.
So my point is that it was always R40. It was nothing that the town did, is what Ms. Pace did in selling her property to Stonegate Associates, whatever.
No, I wouldn't say it was anything the town did, no.
So there's never been a question as to whether that's R20A or R40. It's always been R40. The zone change was done to the PRD.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not spot zoning. The spot zoning was created by a sale of property that left that one piece of property
Green.
in an R40 zone, so it was not a spot zone. It was not a mistake. Or it could have been a mistake by the seller, but
I don't believe we characterize it as a mistake, perhaps. But
could you go back to the original map so I can take a look at that again? What's R20A and R40?
So again, this is the Pace property before sale of the portion of the rear, or about 1.7 acres, excuse me. 1.7 acres went to Stonegate to become part of the Stonegate property.
Could you tell me the total acreage of Stonegate today?
I can't. I'm not sure what it is.
Is there,
Honestly, Matt, I couldn't tell you with certainty. It's fairly large, though. It's this property around here, maybe 20 acres, best guess. Our property today is 1.3, so you can compare that to the size of Stonegate. It's at least 10 times the size.
I was just trying to compare what the density was at Stonegate today to what your, and again, just because we grant you a zone text change doesn't mean that in any way, shape, or form, we have to grant you a special permit for those, for the additional units,
Of course.
correct?
Of course. Oh,
Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm trying to, I'd really like to know what the density of Stonegate is and what the density of this would be. If it was developed and we approved as a special permit, the maximum allowable density, I'd like to know. So you're saying there's 14 units and how many acres?
1.3.
1.3.
The infill allows for 1 unit per 4,000 square feet.
So I got a feeling that the density is not the same in Stonegate as it is, or it would be, the potential is here.
I don't believe that it would be a similar
Anywhere
density,
close.
yeah.
Thank
That's a
you.
different zone, though. That's the
It's a different, yeah, it's a
ARPD,
different
right?
zone.
I'm
That's,
sorry?
that's a different zone. That's the ARPD zone, the Stonegate.
Yeah, but there was initial zones and zone lines, and that's what I was trying to find, to find what was the original. Because the original was Stop and Shop thought that eventually they could put a store there. And that wasn't going to happen. That was 30 years ago.
I just wanted to clarify on the issue of spot zoning. I just wanted to clarify, I was not saying that this existing configuration is a spot zoning. The suggestion by someone at the last meeting was to rezone this back piece, which is R40, to be an R20, not an R20A. And if you look here, you have your C3 zone here, you have your ARPRD special zone here. There's not an R20 zone back here to link into. So that would have, that kind of a change would probably be spot zoning.
But if I'm not mistaken, our R20A zone is a zone that goes from commercial to residential, and it's a transitory zone.
Yes. Right. And it was clearly all along, well, till here, was all along the main road.
Yes,
It
that's,
didn't extend in.
but it was never C, and it was a transitory zone, so there would be a difference between residential and commercial, where this could be built as a light, very light commercial. R20A would be very light
Mhm.
commercial.
Mhm.
Okay, but that's all changed. Because you've got parks, you've got a farm, it became a park, and this is what we're left with.
Right.
I'm just trying to see the benefit to the town of what granting this to an R20A zone is. What's the benefit to the town, other than it's going to add additional density if this commission or future commissions approved a special permit for that?
Well, I think the benefit in part is from a planning standpoint is that you can look at this entire piece as one piece and look at a development as one piece. We couldn't necessarily address a cohesive development that way because the use that's permitted, the more infill use that's permitted on the R28 is not permitted in the 40. So that sort of creates this problem between the front of the site and the back of the site. As if you had, a commercial zone in the back and an R40 in the front, what can you do with the site? You've sort of rendered it in part difficult to give a cohesive use to this. And the cohesive use that we hopefully will propose will be a means to try to preserve the existing house, which your plan of conservation says it would be nice to save and have, in addition to some of the other places around there. So I think that zone change could facilitate a better development on this property that would save the house.
It's R20A now
In the front, right?
in the front, so it's completely zone compliant now
In the front, correct,
in the front.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tedesco. Lou, we need your microphone because Marilyn's at home. She needs to hear it. So.
Now I'm taking it apart. A simple question, I think. The portion of Mrs. Pace's property that she sold to the development in the past, the piece that she sold was of R40 at the time it was sold?
I believe so, yes.
So the zone changed on that piece of property from R40 to the ARPD zone that we have now?
Correct. And
Thank you.
yeah, that was when the whole development was being proposed for Stonegate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Natali.
Two questions. So if this is not approved, how many units can fit in front
I
in
think
the R20, in the current R20A?
that's correct. I mean, we'd have to come back anyways for a special permit, but it would be,
With that, well, assuming that could be approved,
right.
what would the density be in the front in the R28?
I believe Ryan said it would be eight units.
Okay. And I see in our packet that we received a petition that hasn't been spoken about or addressed. So I'm not sure if that comes from the planning office or from you, but I'd like to hear about it.
Probably should come from the planning office first.
Yeah, and maybe actually, the neighbors, Janice wants to speak to this, because our office received this afternoon. This is a petition, basically, of owners within 200 feet of the proposal. What this triggers, or 500 feet, I'm sorry. What this triggers is that under state statute, when you receive such a petition like this, it means that if the commission were to approve the request, you now are triggered to a supermajority, or 6 out of 9 votes, in order to approve the request, versus if it was a simple zone request, simple majority. And the list is based off the abutters list. So if the attorney from Stonegate wants to speak, or anyone from Stonegate?
Any more questions from us up here?
Yes,
No.
I
Mr. Bowman.
had a hard time hearing. So this
Oh, I'm sorry.
application is going to go to a 2/3 majority then in order for a change?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. That's what I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll pull
Okay.
the mic
So
closer.
I could go back to you guys if you want. I'm going to go to the public now. Maybe we'll get that explanation. And then if we have any other questions, we can go to that. So yes, anyone from the public wishing to speak on this?
Good evening. Frank Loman, 17 Stonegate Circle. I serve as the president of the Stonegate Homeowners Association, and we're here again tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to continue to address the reason why all 32 unit owners of Stonegate are in opposition of this zoning change. I have with me tonight Kevin Wetmore, who addressed you last month, and Dennis Senaviva, who also addressed you last month. I'd like to turn the floor, with your permission, over to Kevin. Thank you.
I'm Kevin Wetmore, 103 Stonegate Court. And hopefully everybody had a safe and healthy Christmas and New Year's. And I see Santa left us a new planner, so we're grateful for that. A couple of comments I want to make is all of this that we're working through all started with a misleading real estate advertisement online that said that the property was already approved for 14 units. So we've been working through that process, and that's created issues. And as you know, we met with Mr. Florenza prior to the last P&Z meeting and had a good discussion with him. And clearly we have no issue with him. Obviously, we believe he's a very experienced person in real estate, and talking with him, he takes a great deal of pride in his work. But at our meeting, we had a good chance to be upfront with each other. We explained the concerns that we had at Stonegate associated with that. We did ask him what the plans were for the house, and he said it was going to be torn down. We were concerned with that, but recognize, a developer is like an artist. The artist likes to work on a blank canvas, and the developer likes to work on an open lot. We also asked about how many units were planned, and he said 14. And we understood that we wanted to work in joint with them and maybe work through any issues that would be coming up. And we're still committed to doing that. The request to change the existing zone for partition of the Pace property is based on making the property consistent with zoning for the property. On the surface, that makes sense, but not in totality. Because one of the things is we were the ones that raised the issue around, you have an R40 now. Doesn't make sense to us either, because there's only about 22,000 square feet. It would make sense to have it as an R20, so they could be able to get access for a driveway coming back. And the value of that, it still keeps a value for the property that they have. The R40 change to an R20A, we'd be okay with too, if it was with the understanding it wasn't adding to an infill situation. Because as you mentioned, Mr. Bowman, the transition between the commercial and the residential would push it back into the residential area. The last option is not in the town's residents' best interest to go and turn that over to be an R20, especially if it becomes part of an infill situation. And one of the problems with it is the decision would not be consistent with the town's plan of conservation and development. As I understand it, the infill regulations were put in back in about 2013, and it was some modification in 2019 for being able to add some buildings like garages into it. And in 2017 is when the plan came out for development and conservation for the town. And in some way, it looks like that would supersede an infill situation, because clearly it's spelled out in the plan for development on page 6, and I would quote, "The R20A zoning designation for 802 South Main is appropriate and offers future opportunities to convert the house for professional office purposes, which will preserve the structure and enable it to continue to serve as a signature piece at the gateway of the focus area." And as you may recall from the plan, they were looking for a theme or a focus piece for the South Main Street, and that was going to consist of the historic homes on what's now Stonegate, also for the Pace property in Bavanos, which I was surprised to learn after being here so many years in town, had some historic buildings associated going back into the late 1900s. One of the things I wanted to do was, we knew it was a beautiful house. We'd love to see it be there, and didn't know the whole background for that house. And I had a letter that was given to me by Janae Chesnow. And I think most of you may know Janae. She's a long resident in town. She was the town historian for a number of years, from 2012 to 2019. She was also the founder of the Cheshire Historic District Commission, and was a regular member of that for many years. And more recently, because of her knowledge and input, she's been made a director emeritus for that. And she was also involved with when the plan was being developed in terms of the historic homes and other those that have unique features such as craftsmanship or so unique buildings. So she asked if I would read a letter into the record, and it'll only take a couple minutes. And she said, I am writing this letter in support of the preservation of 802 South Main Street, known as the Pace House. This classic Mortimer Tudor style house was built in 1930. Mortimer Tudor houses are designed to emulate modest English homes of the 16th century. It is a style that focuses on detail and craftsmanship. The Pace House is a unique and beautiful example of the classic Tudor house built from the late 19th century into the early 20th century, into 1920, 1930. In my opinion, it is critical to preserve this unique asset, excuse me, in its entirety as an important component of Cheshire heritage. The Pace House, as is now known, was built by a prominent Cheshire family. The home on that property was owned by Judge Hinks and his wife. They had two sons by Mrs. Hinks' previous marriage to Paul Ney. Mrs. Hinks wanted to build a significant home of style and one that would reflect the family's social prominence in town for her eldest son, Paul Ney Jr. It must have been nice to be her son. She hired an architect with direction to get the best craftsmen and material available. The workmanship, brickwork, other materials, style, both exterior and interior, in building this house makes it critical for it to be preserved. Judge and Mrs. Hinks' picture is prominently displayed in Cheshire's Historical Society. Paul Ney Road in Cheshire is named after the father of the original owner of 802 South Main Street. This is why the town's plan of conservation development included the well-preserved 802 house, along with the Pine Hitchcock House and the Reverend John Hall House. Those are the two houses that are in front of Stonegate. That they had them as a focal area theme for South Main Street. From the same early 20th century period, for example, in town, the Alish Washburn's houses, the style, workmanship, and impact on the town have been identified for preservation. In my many years of service to the town of Cheshire, both on its Historic District Commission as a town historian, as an aside, she's also was the one who wrote the definitive book, history book on Cheshire, from glaciers to greenhouses. It's a great book to have and to read if you're interested in Cheshire. I found there is no recovering from lost opportunities to preserve those assets. The respect for the historic, architecturally distinctive, iconic, or unique structures significantly adds to the quality of life in Cheshire and contributes to making it an attractive and desirable place to live. I strongly encourage the Planning and Zoning Commission to ensure for future generations the ongoing preservation of the Pace House as a Cheshire historic and cultural icon. Now, when we first met with Mr. Florenza, he talked about tearing it down. And then we've heard at the last meeting some waffling around, well, yes, we'd be looking at keeping it, and still haven't heard a very definitive, yes, we will keep that place and preserve it. I have to say, when I read Mrs. Chesnow's letter, reminded me of a couple lyrics from a song years ago from Joni Mitchell. And you might remember some of these lyric words yourself was, they paved over paradise and put in a parking lot. You don't know what you got until it's gone. And that applies certainly to a house that we have on 802 South Main Street. So I don't think any of us want to be the ones to pave over Cheshire. It might not be paradise, but it's a pretty nice place to live because of all the variety that we have of historic homes. So that's my spiel. The only other thing I would mention is we did get a copy today of the traffic analysis, and it was done by David Sullivan, who has a very good reputation for traffic studies and traffic analysis. And as a true engineer, he did a great job of going back and getting specific standards, nationwide standards, and adding up the numbers. But it reminded me a little bit of that old story about the cop that saw a guy wandering around underneath a street light. And he asked the guy, "What are you doing?" The guy said, "I'm looking for my wallet. I lost it." Cop said, "You lost it here?" He said, "No, I lost it up the street, but the light's better here." And this is the same sort of thing where, yeah, it took the standards and pulled the standards and came up, and it's like one every 30 minutes. And I'd like to get the 8:30 slot for that one every 30 minutes. But the reality on the ground, living there between Stonegate and also Brookshire across the way from us, there's a lot of problems with traffic in that now, and it's building up. And then somebody's going to get hurt there someday, and any additional amounts is going to create problems. And we have one more person from Stonegate will talk, and then I believe the president of Brookshire is going to talk about the traffic experiences we have a little bit more, and the problems that both organizations have. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your efforts. And now I'll turn it over to our fellow colleague at Stonegate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, for your record, my name is Dennis Senaviva. I reside at 102 Stonegate Court. I am not the attorney for Stonegate Homeowners Association. I reside there. So I'm one of the fortunate people to be there. And you may recall that I did speak to you last month. I raised a couple of issues with regard to the sorts of concerns that are appropriate for consideration when you're looking at a zone change. They're statutorily set forth in Section 8-2 of the statutes, and I mentioned that last time. I don't want to spend a lot of time going over that. There's a big football game tonight, but I do want to just sort of point out there were two major factors that I thought important. One was traffic, and the second was compliance with the town's plan of conservation and development. And interestingly, the POCD has become, I think, taken on a very important role because, of course, the state requires that you promulgate a new POCD every 10 years, and they wanted to give it some teeth, I think, and that's why it becomes part of your consideration when you're looking at a zone change. And I suggested last month that if you look at the traffic, any increase in traffic, again, no matter how modest per any statistical analysis in the objective, if it causes congestion or any exacerbation of existing congestion, can you or should you approve the zone change? And of course, the answer is you should not. Does the town planning and zoning have control over street improvements required to prevent or mitigate any congestion caused by a development? And of course, here, as you know far better than I, that this section of the road is a state highway, and the final say on any improvements, whether it be road widenings or new signalization, all comes from DOT from the state of Connecticut. So that, again, there's some limitations in terms of how locally we can handle any traffic considerations. The second point I made last month was the fact that, in my opinion, this particular proposal does not comport with the town's plan of conservation and development. I pointed out that your 2019 amendment to the 2016 POCD addressed this parcel specifically, and you stated that you wanted to encourage the preservation of the existing PACE structure, as Kevin read to you. And thus, your plan, as under the POCD, proposed no changes to the zoning regulations, and you had advantage of looking at all the zoning regulations, and yet you made no proposal of any change. So the query, of course, is what's changed in the last 2 years from the time of the or 2+ years, from the time of the promulgation of that 2019 amendment to tonight that would change your mind, particularly where the new zone designation would ostensibly allow 14 residential units on this 1.32 acre site, encouraging, if you will, the demolition or some bastardization of the Pace House. You'd have to do that in order to get that kind of density. And tangentially, in the adult PRD like Stonegate, the density is, it's a calculation, but basically it's 2 units per acre. You take an acre, you subtract out 10% for roads, and then you divide by the acre square footage and multiply by 2. That's your regulation. So it's a significantly lesser density than roughly 10 or 11 in the infill regulation. What I wanted to offer to you tonight is, when considering a zone change, my experience, because I've been doing land use for about 40 years in other towns, you can tell, my experience is that usually the local planning and zoning wants to obtain from either the planner or the applicant some concept of a maximum build-out analysis. You want to know, if you change the zone, what is the impact? And again, it looks like, I think from what I read, you gentlemen have been serving, ladies have been serving for quite some time. And so maybe you have a good sense as to what the potential impact of the zone change would be. One of the nice things that happened tonight is the petitioner did tell you that their plan is to increase the number of residential units that they could seek approval and build on this 1.32 acre parcel would go from the number of 8, which seemed pretty significant to begin with, to 14, not quite double. I want to also point out that with the zone change, of course, comes certain changes in your dimensional requirements, so that the side yard setbacks would be reduced from 30 feet, as they currently are, to 15 feet. And that's side and rear setback. So both your side yard setback would be reduced from 30 to 15 feet, and your rear yard setback would be reduced from 40 to 15 feet, bringing everything much closer to the neighboring properties. The new zone would also permit maximum lot coverage would increase from 10% to 25%. So you're allowing a 2.5% increase in lot coverage, which I think is significant. And again, it does provide the potential of building 14 residential units. And these units don't have to be single family, as you know. They can be up to a 6-unit building in the infill zone. So you could have a couple of 6-unit buildings, maybe one in front of the Pace home and one behind it, and get your 14 units. So the question really is, if you believe that the current right to construct 8 residential units on this site is not dense enough for this location, or if you believe developing the site with 14 residential units is better, that the more dense development, which encourages the raising of the Pace House and substituting new 1 to 6 unit buildings to serve as your signature piece at the gateway of the South Main Street focus area, if you think that's better, then obviously you should vote to approve the petition. If, on the other hand, you believe that the findings you made in 2019, which proposed no changes to the zoning for this specific parcel, I mean, out of the thousands of parcels in this town, this parcel was identified, and your plan said there was no need for change of the zoning, and you offered encouragement to maintain the Pace House. If those determinations or findings you made a short time ago were correct then I hope you would vote no on the petition. And I did want to answer, why was there a protest petition filed today? So what is that? A protest petition is simply a document under the statute that says if more than 20% of the property owners within 500 feet of the subject property file a petition in opposition, then your voting requirement to pass the zone change increases from a simple majority to a 2/3 vote, which for you is 1 more vote. So it's 6 instead of 5. There's nothing, there's no effort to be unneighborly. There's no effort to discourage anyone from maximizing the value of their property. It's just that you can't look at that at least I believe you can't look at that in the abstract. You have to look at it, in reality and the property. And again, as I mentioned last month, I've been here for a year and a half, and really Cheshire's kind of a neat place to be. I was born in Meriden, but I came from Guilford, where I spent the last 28 years. And I remember every summer going up and down Route 1 when all the New Jerseyites and New Yorkers came into the shoreline. Getting up and down Route 1 was a problem, getting out onto out onto the road. And it pales in comparison to getting out onto Route 10. I can tell you that. I didn't realize. So you do have some traffic. I think that's both positive and negative. But increasing the density simply to maximize the value where there isn't any other good, legitimate reason doesn't seem to me to be the sort of reason that should motivate you to change your findings from 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Sure. Just come on up and name and address for the record, please.
My name's William Carroll. I'm president of Brookshire, across from Stonegate. We have concerns about the traffic that will be created from the introduction of this new association. It's going to be created. And there's new pedestrian lights with Route 42 meets South Main Street, increased traffic on Route 42 entering South Main Street. A curb in the road in this area, the amount of speeding on the section of South Main Street, and the number of cars running red lights at Higgins and at the South Main Street, Route 42 junction makes a turn, especially at a left turn, either Brookshire or Stonegate, very difficult at best. And it's also very difficult on the weekends when traffic is so heavy that you wish to
If
add.
you could speak a little slower and a little bit more into the mic or pull the mic over a little bit.
I'm
It's
sorry.
kind of hard to pick up for us.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Traffic, can you see me? Thank you. We feel that the traffic will be increased with these new units being developed. And it's best for the residents of Brookshire that you don't approve of this zoning change. Thank you for your opportunity to speak to you all. And I'd like to bring this information to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak on this application? Okay. Mr. DiLorenzo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. First off, your former town planner submitted their report, and it was very clear that there was an analysis about what the density could be pre and post zone change. He says in his report that if you were to make the change, there could be up to 14, but again, it'd have to come through with a special permit. So nothing is as of right in either scenario. So this commission would then come back and look at the details of any kind of plan, the details of any kind of traffic input. So you have, far more regulatory control at that point if you were to change the zone. So this has not been something that the applicant or the owners have in any way, not been very straightforward about. One of the changes that came about with the development team was after they met with the folks at Stonegate, they did consider trying to save the Pace House. So that, that's been sort of evolving as we've gone through here. When we met with them and said they'd like to see that preserved, they started looking more at the details of that. But, that plan has not been completely fleshed out, not because, they're trying to hide the ball or not being sincere about it, is that, you do this step by step. If you're going to design a plan for 8 units, that's one thing. If you're going to design a plan for 14 units, if you have the zone change, then you look at what your options are and how you can accommodate that. And that, obviously, that's time and money. So, you sort of take things step by step and not come into the hole. Under your current regulations, if you were to have no residential development, but you went for either a bank or financial office or a professional office or a medical clinic or laboratory, which is permitted by your special exceptions here, I think we all know that medical offices generate a lot more traffic than residents. I mean, you go by, at certain times, you go by medical offices and there are many cars in the parking lots going in and out. So those are uses that are permitted under the R20A zone by special permit. So that, those are just different options that if you make no changes, those are things that can go there as well. So again, the special permit process before you, that's really where you have more of the control of specifically what will happen on the site. The zone change allows the options so that we can come in for you at that point. Again, thank you for your time and your patience. If you have any other questions, be happy to answer them.
So just what you said from there, that then it's still up in the air about the house, whether you were
No,
granted this or not.
I think the applicant will make every effort in, in the planning to incorporate the house. I mean, was clear to you that the carriage house you're looking at the property to the right, that couldn't remain because you can't then access the back because of the way the way the building sort of stretches across the property. So a portion of it would have to be removed, which would be the carriage house area.
The main house would remain.
Right.
Mr. Bowman.
If there is no changes made, if we change that, you're zoned by matter of right in an R20 zone or R20A zone would be, matter of right would be 2 units, correct? Adding that to your total is going to make it 1.3,
Of the acreage,
1.3 acres?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Okay, so, but we deal on square footage basis, so we're dealing out of 20,000 square foot. Ryan, could you quickly calculate for me what 1.3 acres would be as far as density would go?
For what scenario?
So you've got 1.3 acres. How many square feet total would that be?
Oh, square feet, that's just ballpark. It's in the range of, it's about just shy of 60.
Pardon?
Just shy of 60, like 56,000.
56.
Just shy of 60,000?
Correct.
All right, so in changing this zone, it's not going to matter. Because by matter of right, you could still only get 2 units. So whether we change it or not is not going to change the right of what you can do with this. So, okay, that's,
What do you mean 2 units? I'm not following you there.
well, if it's an R28 zone and you're allowed 1 unit per 20,000 square feet and there's less than 60,000 square feet, you therefore can get 2 units in there.
Mhm.
Okay, unless they come in for special permit. So
Right.
if we're adding, whatever we're adding to the R20 or R28 zone is not going to change what they have the ability to get their 2.
It would not
particular-
change the 2,
Yeah,
yeah.
2 particular units. And no one here created anything except the Paces, because they're the ones that chose to sell their property to Stonegate Associates initially. Therefore, anything that's created now, if we're trying to recreate something, it's nothing that was an initial part of a piece of property. This property has been subdivided and subdivided and subdivided. So that's all I was trying to get
Okay.
across. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Natale.
Hopefully just 2 more. So it's not a historic house, the house that's there right now. So realistically, if you buy the property, it's not economical to repair the house. It's falling down. There's something wrong with it. It could be torn down. There's nothing that we can do to stop that. Even though the POCD recommends it, it's still, we can't force that. So let's say in that scenario, that house does get torn down. And I think it's going along the lines from what Mr. Bowman was saying. What does that do to change the density if that house were not there? How many units could go on that property?
I don't think it changes, it doesn't change anything. It just means that if you made the zone change and the house stays, that would count as one of the 14 if we came in with a special permit, okay? If you don't make the zone change, we could still come in with the special permit, only it would be for 8, and it could include or not include the house. So, I mean, the house is always counted, would always be counted as a unit in whatever is the number that's coming in for you.
Okay, so the house would not be split up into multiple units. It would be 1 unit.
That I don't know. That I don't know. I don't know structurally how that house is really internally.
I don't see any benefit to the town for this, to be very honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not, I won't say it, but I'm going there, Matt. Next question I had was about the traffic. So the last meeting, I mentioned something about the traffic light. This is not Stonegate. This is not Brookshire, because they are back from the intersection. This is at that intersection. So I think I asked about I know there used to be a light that faced that property, and I'm not sure if they replaced that when they redid everything. But are there any approvals or anything from the state that's needed? Because that's right, literally at that traffic light.
We've been in discussions with the state. We'd have to work with the state on any driveway any changes to the driveway that would have to be there. the state would have to look at that.
Okay, and what is the state indicated so far?
The state,
Right.
the state has given some preliminary indication that, again, this is all based on just a few discussions, to be honest with you, that a driveway, exit driveway would be located as close as possible to the north to get away from the traffic light, to give a little bit of separation from the light itself. But that's very preliminary discussions with DOT.
Gotcha. So there's no discussions about having that a traffic light facing that way.
No.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mercado.
Would that be a right turn only driveway? Could you do that? Or
Not certain yet. That would not be something we would prefer, but again, ongoing discussions with DOT.
Mr. Selma.
Yeah, the talk of if we did nothing, what could be done there now? Michael, if they just bought the property as is and developed it, they could knock down the building and put a new house there. That's about it.
Well, correct, but they would, as of right, as Mr. Bowman indicated earlier, they have two in the portion that's currently zoned R20A, they could do up to 2 units there. So they could put, but they can replace it. There's nothing stopping them, as I said earlier, about demolishing the existing home. They could do that tomorrow if they wanted to, because
Right.
the POCD is just an advisory document. It's not a regulatory document.
Right. They could knock down the building and put a doctor's office there or something,
Correct.
or whatever.
But they'd have to follow all the other performance regulations,
Right, right.
parking, et cetera. Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Tedesco.
2 thoughts very briefly. Whether what I'm going to say is a benefit to the town depends on your perspective, but what infill developments do is they give a new type of, additional type of housing for the town there. We're largely a single-family home town, and this gives apartment-like or condominium-like units, which expands and varies the housing base. Now, whether you think that's a development or not depends on your perspective, but it certainly does present an opportunity. The second thing is, it seems to me that what we're talking about here in terms of a difference is the applicant could, if we do nothing, the applicant could put 8 infill units in right now. And if we change the zone here, they could possibly, assuming they came in and asked for that, put in 14. That's a very small difference from the town's perspective, from what I can see. It's hard to say there's going to be a traffic problem when you have an expert's report that says there's an additional 2 cars in an hour. So, I mean, it seems to me that it's a very small difference between 8 and 14 in terms of the traffic or anything else in the area. Again, I'm not saying that I'm going to necessarily vote that way, but that's how I'm perceiving this right now.
Again, if there's no other questions, again, thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
If you have any more questions,
I was asking, any more commission members, any more questions? Okay. Public, one last time. Anyone from the public? Okay. There's no new information coming in. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm not ready to vote on this tonight. I don't know. I'm sure you guys feel the same way, especially with the new information that we got in today, this afternoon. So I will close the public hearing, but we will not take it up for vote later. It would be on the January 24th meeting. All right, moving on. I'll take 2 and 3 together, which is the subdivision application of Pinnacle Land Development for Coleman Road.
Mr. Chairman,
You'll be recusing yourself?
I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you.
The continuation of the public hearing of the subdivision application of Pinnacle Land Development LLC, care of Ryan Thompson, RCL Thompson LLC, 19 Pepperbush Drive, Clinton, Connecticut, 06413, for an 11-lot subdivision. Property located on Coleman Road is generally shown on Assessor's Map number 79, lot number 69 in the R40 zone. Number 3, the continuation of the special permit application of Pinnacle Land Development LLC, care of Ryan Thompson, RCL Thompson LLC, 19 Pepperbush Drive, Clinton, Connecticut, 06413, for a rear lot access. Property located on Coleman Road as generally shown on Assessor's Map number 79, lot number 69 in an R40 zone.
Thank you. If I could ask the public that's here to take the conversations out into the hall. We have a very long agenda tonight, and we'd like to keep going on our meeting. I guess they didn't hear me. If we just take the conversations out into the hall, that would be great, so we could keep going on the meeting. Thank you very much. Mr. Vazon.
Yes, for the record, I am Anthony Fazan. I'm the attorney with offices here in Cheshire, representing the applicant. As the agenda indicates, there have been several public hearings on these applications. I think for the most part, the subdivision itself has been gone over thoroughly. We don't really have any further presentation on the specifics of the subdivision. Mr. Thompson, the engineer on the project, is here if you should have any questions, but we don't really don't have anything further to present. The town consulting engineers in the Department of Public Works and Engineering has commented on all of the drainage requirements and the specifics of the road and the cul-de-sac. Fire department has chimed in, and all of those comments have been complied with. If you recall, at the end of the public hearing, which was on December 13th, nearly a month ago, the only unresolved issue was whether there was reason to believe that any component of the Ginny Hill Variety Mine was located on the subdivision property. And there was back and forth on whether it was or whether there were or whether there weren't. To resolve that and to try and satisfy the Public Works and Engineering and the town's consulting engineers, the developers, Phil Bowman and Paul Bowman, had a meeting with Mr. Nowotny, Dan Bombero, and the professional engineer from Barton and Logaidis, if that's the right way to pronounce that, Denise Lord, and then the principal, Kevin Grindle. They agreed at that meeting to a procedure which would be applicable to the southern portion of the property. And that procedure was spelled out in a letter from Pinnacle Development to Mr. Nowotny. I believe you all have received a copy of that letter showing what the procedure would be prior to getting building permits. The consulting engineers have confirmed by email, that's part of the record, that the procedure that's been proposed is acceptable to them and can meet any concerns that might develop. And I also believe I confirmed with Mr. Glidden that Mr. Nowotny has similarly confirmed by email that Public Works and Engineering are satisfied with that procedure. We really don't have anything else. As I said, the subdivision itself has been pretty thoroughly reviewed, and with the procedure and inspections that will go on when the foundations are being excavated, we believe should put to rest whether or not there are any vestiges of the Variety Mine on the property.
Okay. Mr. Tedesco.
Mr. Fazon, you've mentioned the new procedure, and I have Mr. Bowman's December 21st letter. Could you explain for the record in a little bit of detail exactly what that means is going to happen and what the effect of that is?
Let's see who's here. Phil, do you want to do that? Or Paul? Yeah, I think they went into it more detail. I think they would be best to explain it.
Thank you.
Phil Bowman, 365 Finch Ave. Do you mind repeating your question, Mr. Tedisco?
Maybe I'm just dense and it takes a little more explanation in the letter, but we have your December 21st, 2001 letter to Mr. Nowotny.
Okay.
And it's clearly written. Can you tell me exactly what that means is going to happen and what the effect of what you're doing here is? What it will tell us about the property and the possible existence of mines and such?
Sure. Well, I think obviously the concern was the adits from the mine shaft potentially being on the subject parcel.
Yes.
So we have proposed that during foundation excavation, we will have a state licensed material testing company come out to perform soil tests, like a density test on the soils to make sure that they're stable. We will also, if needed, have a design professional, structural engineer, most likely, design the foundation specs to appropriately handle if there is a void created anywhere under a foundation, to be able to bridge that void sufficiently to handle the weight of the house, the proposed structure above it. That was discussed at our meeting with Denise Lord and Kevin Grindle. They found that to be acceptable steps in their mind, so we proposed it in writing and sent it to them.
So the effect of this additional layer of analysis and additional experts would be to make it less likely or unlikely that, assuming there had been mining there, that there would be a sinkhole or something that would damage property after it's built. Is that the purpose of doing these things?
It's specific to the house. If it's specific to the construction areas, specifically really the house.
To where the specific house is?
Correct. We wouldn't be digging or doing testing all over every lot. It would be specific to the house location.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Dawson.
Basically, what you're saying is where you're putting the foundation in, that is going to be checked, and
that's
because
correct.
You would have the responsibility as a contractor anyway, so naturally your record's always been good, and I'm sure you'll take the right steps because we know what could happen if you didn't. So
correct.
I'm quite comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I understand a little bit about construction, so I do understand it. I mean,
Yep. Again, this whole, the added question was speculative in nature to begin with. And so this is our proposal to address if, when we excavate, if there is something that could occur. We did also offer to Public Works and Engineering to alert them when we're going to excavate. They could have a representative come out and, if they see something that we're possibly not seeing, to address it then.
Mr. Bowman, there's only certain, I'm sure you have a reason for it. There's only certain lots that this will be done for. You've listed lots number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. The other lots, this would not be prudent to do, or it's not necessary for the other lots?
So those are the lots that specifically abut the southerly portion of the property. The mine shafts that were identified off the property were to the south. So that's why we're proposing those specific lots.
Okay, thank you.
Anthony Fazzone, again, if you go back to the original concern raised by the Public Works and Engineering, it was along the southerly boundary of the property, and these are all of the lots that are on the southerly boundary of the property. I don't think there's ever been any, the mine vein itself, you'll recall, was was 100 and some odd feet off of the southern boundary of the property. So if the adits extended into the Tripadina property, which is the subject, they would be in the area in the southern half of the property.
Okay, any other questions by commission members? No, anyone from the public wishing to speak on this?
My name is Lauren Corman. I live at 400 Spruce Street in Cheshire. I live over near the Peck Mines by Chestnut. And so I wanted to talk to you today about this. You may all recall, was the sinkhole that opened up in our neighborhood in 2007. And it was massive, if anybody wants to see it. And so when I heard about this development, I just wanted to, so not only do I live in the neighborhood, but I also wrote my master's thesis after the hole opened up on this topic from the historical point of view. From the historical point of view. And so the first thing I did when I heard about this development was I remembered the maps from the Fritz report. And there's on the map from the Fritz report, it showed the central vein actually going through Coleman Road. And it goes between crossing Coleman Road between what appears to be Filson Court and what on the modern day map of Cheshire is Con Court, but now it's called Monarch Court, I think, and it's a new development. And so to me, it looked like this new development was right on the western side of Coleman Road. That's what it looked like to me if you compare it to the modern day map of Cheshire. And it has the central map going mighty close to that property. And so that's why I got somewhat concerned because of what happened in our neighborhood. So I just would like to read you what I wrote. So I live in the neighborhood that includes the mine shaft on Chestnut Street. And shortly after the large sinkhole opened on the Baker property at 425 Sheridan, I wrote my master's thesis on the history of the barite mines of Cheshire called What Lies Beneath. There's a copy of it in the library. What I learned was that our neighborhood is a cautionary tale that the town should never have allowed our neighborhood to be built over land underlain by old abandoned mines. As you are considering allowing the development of the Tripadina property off Coleman Road, I would like to highlight, bring to your attention the town officials deciding on this matter and all of the Cheshire residents that there are 5 major concerns about building homes and neighborhoods over the mines abandoned more than a century ago. Physical safety, health, property values, property owners' legal liability, and the town's legal liability. And I would like for you to include the following questions and concerns as you consider the approval of this development. So based on the Fritz report that I just described, the map of the north, central, and south veins of Ginny Hill mines, which can be found on the Cheshire Clerk's office, it is actually the central vein that comes closest to the development in question on that map. So it comes all the way through Coleman Road, and if you compare that map I just explained to the modern day map, it appears to be between Filson Court and Monarch Court on the west side. So even it appears to, even if it does not go through the proposed new development, but even the developers thought there was a possibility that the abandoned mines do run through the property, enough so that they used ground penetrating radar on portions of the property. As we know, the accuracy of ground penetrating radar varies wildly from 4 feet to 100 feet for many reasons. So decisions cannot be left entirely to that technology alone. If the main vein goes through that property, that would be bad for future homeowners And if the main vein parallels that property, that could still be bad for future homeowners. Even if a main vein is identified, the Cornish miners still followed the ore and dug more minor tunnels following the ore, so that if the main vein is near the property, minor veins could easily go through the property. The Cornish miners were known for fanning out from the main shafts, again, to follow the ore. An example of this in our neighborhood is that the main shaft is on Chestnut Street and the main vein appears to parallel Chestnut Street to the west. However, when I first became aware of the mines in our neighborhood, it was when a hole opened on the Vosburg property on an old section of Chestnut Street. So this is before the new development was built. The Vosburg's property, and they have since moved away, was 2 properties east of where the Baker sinkhole opened not long after. Before the Vosburgs moved away, they brought in a backhoe and dug up in the area where the sinkhole had opened, and they found old beams that had been used to support the mining tunnels. Again, this shows that the mining tunnels do not necessarily go in a definitively straight line. They fan out. The Baker sinkhole first opened when the Lansels owned the property. It opened up to 8 feet deep on a Thursday. They went on vacation that weekend, and it had filled, and they had it filled when they were gone, and told the contractor who filled it that it was a collapsed septic system. That Saturday, 7 truckloads of fill were brought in to fill the sinkhole. Sunday morning, I saw several men standing around where I knew the hole to be, including a neighbor who lived in the house between us. And I asked what was going on, and apparently, under the weight of the fill, the hole had now opened to 15 feet deep, and the contractor said that it was clearly not the collapsed septic tank as he had been told, because there was an exposed and intact wall of the old septic tank, and he was extremely upset to hear that there were abandoned mines on the property where he had heavy equipment and employees. The hole was filled again, and by spring, the property was advertised for sale with, quote, beautiful park-like backyard. It was for sale by owner. The Bakers, with their very young children, purchased the home and property, and within a month of their moving in, it rained and rained. And the sinkhole, which they had only been recently informed about by me, not the Lansels, which would have been far more appropriate, collapsed again. Only this time, the hole was tremendous. It was extremely close to the home, and the longer it stayed open, the more the sides caved in. And as the family was determined how best to settle the situation, because this was the 3rd time the hole had opened, and each time it was bigger and deeper, it was now 13 feet wide, and there's debate as to whether or not it was 25 feet or 40 feet deep. But if your property with your children, if this was your property with your children, would it really matter? It ultimately cost the Bakers over $26,000 to fill the hole with large boulders, stone, rubble, and dirt. And when they did fill the hole, they were not sure that the hole might not open again to be even bigger and deeper under the weight of the fill. While the hole was open, the Bakers received a notice on their door from the town. The notice said, and I'm not quoting this exactly, but it said something to the effect of, if you do not prove to us that your property and home is safe for occupancy, you will be evicted. Bill Baker called me that night, understandably extremely upset. This was bad for the Bakers and bad for the whole neighborhood. Their property had no value, and if the property was abandoned, what would that mean for the property values for the whole neighborhood? I don't know why, but the eviction notice just disappeared, and I never heard another thing about it. Is the property safe? Is the home safe? While the home was open, I could hear water running through it like a river, especially after it rained, because it was not just a hole. It was a hole that intersected with an adit that goes under the house and under the property, under Sheridan Road, which had opened in the 70s, and under the properties north and south of it. Another concern when the hole was open was the fire department ever informed? I don't know. I don't think they were. But if there was a fire at nighttime and the fire department came running around the back of the property and didn't know the giant sinkhole was there, well, that would have been bad. After the Baker hole was filled in, another smaller hole opened up across the street on what was Ugrun's property. The Bakers and Ugrins sued the town, and they won. The precedent had been set. The concern is that if future homes on a newly developed property have similar issues as our neighbor has had, then the town would clearly be open to future lawsuits. The Ugrins also sued Kalkany, the realtor that sold them the home, and the Ugrins won, and they moved out of the neighborhood. If holes opened up after when a new family moves in, that new family can sue the previous owner and the realtor as well as the town. So this not only puts the homeowner in jeopardy, but it also puts the seller, the realtor, and the town in jeopardy. The Lansels didn't dig the mines, and they didn't approve the development of the neighborhood over the lands underlain by mines, but they found themselves in legal jeopardy nonetheless when they sold their home to the Bakers. After the Baker and Ugrin hole opened up, another sinkhole opened up in a side yard of the property right next to the main shaft. This hole was also in the newspaper, so it's already a matter of public record, where the adits were theoretically collapsed during the development process in the new section of Chestnut. Another financial cost and stressful experience for the homeowner.
Is this just trying to show us like the pattern of what could happen? I mean, is there a lot more going on?
No,
I mean, we
I'm almost
understand.
done.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just skip ahead quickly. So the other thing is that wood beams that are supporting the mines deteriorate over time, and so as they deteriorate, they can cause more sinkholes to open and rise to the surface, and that will happen as the water runs through them and just as time goes by. Another thing is that families don't want to talk about it because they're afraid for their property value. So when things happen in their homes and in their properties, they won't talk about it. If a new development is built, who will tell the homeowners that their land may be underlined by mines? If you were buying a new home, wouldn't you want to know this was a possibility? Would it ever occur to you as someone purchasing a new home to ask that question? Probably not. Especially if they didn't come from Cheshire and were not familiar with this even remotely. And if a new development was built, what if people want to dig pools into their property or geothermal heating and cooling systems that could go down hundreds of feet deep? Would this jeopardize something under the earth because they're getting increasingly more popular? If the new development is built, anyway, the bottom line, one more thing is city water, or if these are on well water, is the well water going to be tested for contaminants specific to mines? So finally, the town of Cheshire knew that our neighborhood was underlain by mines and allowed it to be developed anyway. It has put homeowners in our neighborhood in a very difficult position, worrying about physical and financial security if more holes should open in our neighborhood. So again, there's those 5 major concerns: physical safety, health, property values, property owners' legal liability, and the town's legal liability. And so do you, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, have total confidence that no sinkholes will open or that any other issues will occur on these properties proposed for development that could trigger any of the 5 major concerns listed above, which have direct connection to the abandoned barite mines of Cheshire? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr.
Yeah.
Kaderis?
Yes, based on the applicant's due diligence, do you have any concerns with what they've done to try to locate the mines?
I very much appreciate that they're looking into this. I really do. I think that's terrific. I am concerned though that these mines clearly, what if they're not right under the house? What if they're on the property, like the Bakers was on the property? It is also under the house actually, but it's also on the property. And it appears to go the entire length of their property, where they don't live there anymore. They since moved away. But that property is completely underlain by mines. And so I just feel like, if there was a way to spot check on more than just under the few homes along the southern strip, I think that might give me a little bit more confidence too.
But they indicated they were doing ground penetrating radar survey of the property. Is that, to your knowledge, because I very rarely run into mine experts in Connecticut, who, to your knowledge, would that be sufficient to indicate of any potential problem?
The problem with ground penetrating radar, from what I understand, is that they can be unpredictable. They depending on what the earth is like underneath, they could give you a sense of what's 4 feet down or 100 feet down, and they're inconsistent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Okay, Anthony, do you have anything further? Sure.
So just to alleviate one of the last comments, the property is to be served by city water. And it's too bad that the speaker wasn't able to be here, didn't have notice of this from the beginning, because I think the record here shows, and one of the comments that the town engineer brought up was that it is, I don't want to say purely, but it's pretty significantly speculative that any of the variety mine elements exist on the Tripodina property. And the entire southern boundary, every foundation area is going to be excavated and tested by licensed and qualified people. The information that's in the town clerk's office, as pointed out by the speaker, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names, and I didn't get her last name, so I'm not trying to be rude by not referring to her by name. There are reports there that say, that specifically state that the mines are known to be located on the following properties. Tripodina property is not listed. The reports talk about the fact that the location of the mine and the adits was basically determined by interviews, and Mrs. Tripodina, who had been a longtime owner of the property, was specifically mentioned as one of the people to be interviewed and whose property was examined by the people who did those reports, including the Fritz report. The bottom line from the applicant's point of view was that it was purely speculative that any portion, any of the elements of the Bridie's mine would be on the Tripodina property. It's pretty well defined. The map that was shown to you is in the record. It's both been referred to by me in the report that I gave, and the comments to that report by the town's consulting engineers. It shows specifically where the main vein is, and the shafts that go down to the main. And there's a diagram in the record, shows that at the nearest point, that main shaft at a corner of the property is 80 some odd feet, and up at the Coleman Road site is over 100 feet. As I said, again, the applicants have met with the Department of Public Works and Engineering and the town's consulting engineers, and have come up with this as a plan balanced by the fact that the existing literature about the Ginny Hill mine does not show it to be on the Tripadena property. And we think that what's being proposed will be safe, will create a safe situation, and will, if there is anything out there, it'll discover that.
Okay.
I'm Ryan Thompson, the engineer and surveyor on this project. I just want to add one thing, as was briefed before, the elevation, the grade will be actually raised. So there will be less excavating down and more raising up along that southern boundary as well. So just keep that also in mind. You're not going from existing grade down 10 feet. You're going from a higher elevation down 10 feet. So you're not digging as deep into the existing ground.
Okay, Mr. Tedesco.
So what is the effect? What is the effect of that? What does that mean?
I'm simply pointing out that this area here, the plan calls to raise the grade of the property. So a portion of the basement or the foundation will be in that fill material, not in the existing ground. So instead of going from here down 10 feet and potentially impacting, which we don't believe anything's there, but then going down, you're actually starting at a higher level and going down. So you're impacting the existing grade even less. That's what I'm saying. There's less impact to the existing conditions after the site is prepared.
Last hearing also, and I think you commented on the effect, if any, of having shafts or adits or horizontal tunnels very deep into the ground with a mine, how that might or might not affect the situation if they were very low and collapsed.
Yes. So again, I want everybody to be clear. I am not a geotechnical engineer, but I've had pretty significant training and education and have performed some geotechnical engineering tasks throughout my 22 years of being an engineer. And what I was saying is that what was briefed by Attorney Fazzone in his research was that the deeper the shaft, the less impact it has on the surface. Those voids that may open up 100 feet or 200 feet down don't propagate up to the surface the same way they do at, say, 20 feet, because there's the attenuation of the movement of the soils is basically, it attenuates as it goes up higher through the stratus. That's what I was saying.
Thank you.
Again, Anthony Fazzone. The historically, the only sinkhole that is reported was down at the Radmere Drive, Merwin Circle, Ginny Hill Road section, and there was only one. And that goes back a lot of years. There's never been any evidence of a sinkhole or depression on the Tripadena property. It's been constantly used. It's been constantly farmed, greenhouses covering it, heavy equipment driving over it.
That one sinkhole you're talking about, is that the one that Ms. Corman was talking about?
No, she's talking about the other side of town.
Other side of town.
She's talking about down off of Peck Lane.
And how far was the sinkhole that you just referenced in this area from this property, if you can estimate that?
Half a mile or more.
All set, Lou, or are you still thinking? Oh, okay. I see you pondering there. All right, commission members, anything else? No? Okay, you're all set.
I am.
All right, I'm going to close this public hearing. Thank you. Moving on, re-subdivision application of Miller Napolitano Wolf LLC, TriStar Development. 7 lots, Stonebridge Crossing. Can we hear the call for that, please?
Yes, the re-subdivision application of Miller Napolitano Wolf LLC and TriStar Development LLC for re-subdivision of property located at 1953, 2037, and 2061 Highland Avenue and I-691 and Dickerman Road for a 7-lot subdivision, Stonebridge Crossing, as generally shown in Assessor's Map numbers A4, B3, lots numbers 6, 13, and 4, and B51 in the Interchange Special Development District Zone. This application is the same number of lots and the same road layout as approved application for this location. Revisions to lines and lot sizes are being proposed in this application.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Again, for the applicant, my name is Anthony Fazzone. I'm an attorney here in Cheshire with offices here in Cheshire and representing the applicant. I think you all were sent an 11 by 17 version of this map. What we're basically doing here is asking for lot line revisions. As the call of the meeting says, there's the same number of lots. They're all pretty much in the same location. There's the same road layout. So under other considerations, this ordinarily would not require a re-subdivision application. However, there is a change to what was originally proposed and accepted in our existing approval to the open space area. The greenish area is where the open space was on the original subdivision. The blue area shows where the changes are. The difference in open space is going from 11.02 acres to 21.7 acres, most of it coming out of lot number 5. There's pretty good change to lot number 3. You should have a table that shows you the change to each lot. Looks like the spreadsheet. The main change is to lot 5. Lot 7, you approved for a multifamily development not too long ago. The proposed change or the development of lot 7 that was approved is based on the configuration as lot 7 would be based on this application. The other change is that the pump station is going to be located over in this corner, adjacent to Dickerman Road. So that's basically was taken out of lot 7. I know they're not easy to see on the 11 by 17, but this is the area that is now being part of lot 3. This is the old property line, and the same difference over here with lot 5. Excuse me. In the statute concerning what is a re-subdivision or what is not a re-subdivision, the only thing, and the reason we're here, and I state in one of my letters, is we're here out of an abundance of caution. And the statute says something to the effect that if the change affects any area reserved for public use, well, the question is whether or not the open space, even though it was private, created something that changed something that may or could have possibly be for public use. So that's why we're here instead of just doing lot line revisions, which we would be allowed to do other than the open space question. We're allowed to do that as a matter of right.
Was the original reason for doing it because of the pump station?
Part of the reason is the pump station. Part of the reason was what was going to be done with the open space. There was some discussion of maybe the town would want it because of the stone archway. I think that's not, town does not have any interest in doing that. So the open space will be owned by the owners association in the lots, but part of it is the pump station, but it's not the whole reason.
Okay. Mr. Selmo.
The open space is going to be owned by the owners association of lot 7, that subdivision, or the other lots?
The other lots.
Okay. The green section, is that part of lot 7 open space? I'm just trying to figure out what the homeowner association is going to be responsible for, or what lot 7 is going to be responsible for.
It's not a homeowners association per se, because the rest of this is all commercial, and it'll be they would be the owners. But that would include all of this and what's blue.
It looks like the green is part of lot 7.
But it's not, it was.
Oh, okay.
It was at one time, but if you were to check the site plans for the approvals that were obtained on lot 7, they would coincide exactly with the new property line of lot 7.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So really nothing that's changing. It's just lot lines that are changing. Nothing else is changing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And lot lines that are changing and an increase in the open space.
In the open space.
And just for the record, to clarify, Mr. Chairman, as Attorney Fazzone stated, under Connecticut General State Statutes, there's 3 instances where a re-subdivision is triggered. One is if you create additional lots of a previously approved subdivision. 2 is modifying areas which were reserved for public space, meaning open space. Or 3 is the modifications of street layouts associated with an approved subdivision. So in this case, it meets the test number 2.
Okay.
But really, is there a substantive change? The substantive change is there's additional open space and changing which lot some of the open space is associated with.
Okay. Commission members, any other questions? No? Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tyler.
And just for clarification, I know Marilyn is watching or recording. Mr. Bowman is recusing himself, is not sitting.
Yeah, he never came back. Yeah. Okay, thank you. With that, I'll be closing the public hearing. Moving on, let's take 5, 6, and 7 all together, which is the zone map change for Strathmore Holdings, re-subdivision modification application Strathmore, and special permit application at Strathmore.
Yeah, number 5, the zone map change petition, Strathmore Holdings LLC, care of Bernard Pellegrino Esquire, the Pellegrino Law Firm, 475 Whitney Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut 06511, to change from present R40 zone to an affordable housing development to construct a 56-unit affordable housing development pursuant to Section 44A of the zoning regulations, property located at 64, 69, 74, 80 East Mitchell Avenue, Cheshire, Connecticut, is generally shown on assessor's maps, numbers 57 and 58, lot numbers 261, 269, 270, 271, and 2. Property description available for review in the planning office and filed in the town clerk's office. Number 6, the special permit application of Strathmore Holdings LLC, care of Bernard Pellegrino Esquire, the Pellegrino Law Firm, 475 Whitney Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut 06511, for a proposed development of a 56-unit affordable housing development property generally located at 64, 69, 74, 80 at 0 East Mitchell Avenue, Cheshire, Connecticut 06410, as generally shown on assessor's map number 57 and 58, lot numbers 261, 269, 270, 271, and 2, in an existing R40 zone, approved AHD zone. Number 7, the re-subdivision modification of Strathmore Holdings LLC, care of Bernard Pellegrino Esquire, the Pellegrino Law Firm, 475 Whitney Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut, 06511, for a one-lot re-subdivision modification, property located on East Mitchell Avenue, Cheshire, Connecticut 06410, as generally shown on assessor's maps number 57 and 58, lots numbers 261, 269, 270, 271, and 2, in an existing R40 zone, proposed AHD zone.
Thank you. And represent the applicant?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Bernard Pellegrino. I'm an attorney with the Pellegrino Law Firm in New Haven. It's good to be here. I don't get here that often, but I always enjoy coming before the commission and working with your staff. Tonight, I represent Strathmore Holdings LLC in regard to the applications that were just read into the record. With me is Dean Fisk, who is a principal of Strathmore Holdings. Also with me is members of our design team, Ryan McAvoy from SRL Consulting. Dave Sullivan is going to join us virtually. He's our traffic engineer. And Todd Clark is our project architect. And he's here with us. You'll hear from them as we proceed. As I mentioned, and as was read into the record, we have 3 applications before you this evening, all necessary for the proposed development of an affordable housing development on East Mitchell Avenue in accordance with your affordable housing development regulations contained in Section 44A of your regulations. First is a zone change. Second is the special permit for the site development plan, a re-subdivision application. And so those are the 3 applications. We've also filed a request for an 8-24 referral to the Legislative Council, which, as you'll hear later, is related to the re-subdivision and change in the existing to proposed layout of the right-of-way at the terminus of East Mitchell Avenue. The properties in question are 5 parcels located at the end of each East Mitchell Avenue, which are all owned by Strathmore. They total 5.728 acres. The majority of the land is undeveloped. One parcel does have a residence that is proposed to be demolished to allow for the development of the project. The applications before you, as I mentioned, seek the approval for the development of a 56-unit residential development under your regulation. From the outset, our client was committed to bringing forward a development proposal in accordance with your regulatory requirements to develop the land as an affordable housing project that is compatible with its desire to develop its land, but at the same time also meets your standards for a sensible and feasible community for affordable housing in the town of Cheshire. Therefore, the proposal meets all of the bulk standards. the parking and density requirements, and the affordability provisions contained in Section 44A. The 56 units would be constructed within 5 buildings, 3 of which contain 12 units and 2 10-unit buildings. 14 of those units would be designated and deed restricted as affordable units. We're proposing 112 parking spaces, which is 2 spaces per unit as required by the regulation. All of the all of the units would be 2-bedroom units. Projects served by water and sewer. We've received approval from the WPCA, from the Inland Wetlands Commission, and a letter from the RWA that the properties have adequate water pressure service for the development. We're aware that your 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development recommended the adoption of an affordability plan and regulations that would become an effective tool for the orderly approval and development of affordable housing in the town of Cheshire. And that in 2019, you enacted Section 44A to accomplish that worthwhile goal. We understand that the goal was meant to increase your affordability percentage above the 3.81% that's acknowledged in the current affordable housing appeals list maintained by the State Department of Housing. We also acknowledge that the regulatory scheme that you adopted is responsive to the regional finding of the Central Naugatuck Valley Planning Agency's housing profile, which we've included in our submission set of documents. We've also done an affordability plan that I'll detail later in more detail later in our presentation. The first application that I'd like to start with is our zone change to affordable housing district. With this application, we seek your approval to change the zone of these 5 parcels to the AHD zone per section 44A.3.1 of your regulations. The properties are presently zoned R40 collectively, which is a permitted zone for the AHD district. Collectively, they have more than 50 feet of frontage on a town road, East Mitchell Avenue, as required, and that the properties are within 500 feet of a state highway, Route 10 in this case. Served by public water and sewer, as I mentioned earlier. It's greater than 5 acres and less than 25 acres, as I mentioned, 5.728, all of which are the standards under section 44A.3.1 for eligibility for the AHD district. In addition to meeting all of the eligibility requirements, we've submitted all the maps, plans, and supporting materials and other data required to be submitted by section 44A. The site development plan that has been submitted in conjunction with this zone changed application also meets all of the goals, standards, and requirements of the regulation, and is therefore consistent with the goals of the PhD, which pose no substantial risks or hazards to any public interest in health, safety, or other matters that would necessitate the denial of any of these applications. We've provided notice for the zone change and the special permit as required by the regulations as well. So we would respectfully request that you approve the zone change for the parcels as set forth in the application. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have under the zone change, or if you want, you can wait till we go through the site development application. It's up to you.
Anybody, do you want to take it in pieces, or does everyone do it at the end? What do you want to do? Anyone have questions now, basically? No. We'll hear the whole thing.
Okay. 2 of the 3, I think this one and the re-subdivision are fairly technical. I think the kind of the nuts and bolts, the guts of this application, we're going to present to you now under the site development plan. I'm going to turn it over to our consultants in a moment because they're better able to describe some of that stuff for you all. But as I mentioned, the site development plan has been carefully designed really from the outset to meet the standards contained in your regulations under 44A, including the 2 space per unit parking regulation. I know you recently have entertained and approved a project under this regulation. We've worked closely with staff. We've reviewed comments from not only the prior application, but the deliberations of this commission. We've tried to address some of the issues that you looked at in that prior application and had concerns over. We've worked closely with staff, both with Mr. Volker. I met last Thursday with Mr. Glidden in anticipation of tonight's hearing. As always, your staff has been helpful in pointing out issues that they thought should be addressed. I think we've been responsive to those questions and suggestions also throughout the pre-application process for this commission and also during the prior applications with other of the land use commissions in town, which, as I mentioned, we've received approval from. So with that, unless you have any questions for me, I'll sit down and turn it over to Ryan McAvoy.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name is Ryan McAvoy. I'm a licensed professional engineer with SLR Consulting. And with me today is Dave Sullivan, who cannot appear in person, unfortunately, because of COVID-related issues, but he is available to testify by phone. We did speak with Mr. Glidden about that, and if you're willing to accept his testimony, he's on the phone right now, but I'll start with the site plan-related elements. So today, the property, I'm going to refer to it in the singular, although it is 5 parcels presently, all owned by Strathmore Holdings, as Bernie mentioned, is 5.75 roughly acres in size, shown here in yellow. It's the largest of the 5 was 2.5 acres, and the smallest of the 5 is 0.4. Property is almost entirely overgrown or used to be residential properties in the past. East Mitchell Avenue terminates at a dead end. There's no cul-de-sac. There's no formal terminus of the road. It just kind of stops, and it's a very narrow right-of-way, only 30 feet in width in this location. We do have single-family residential properties along East Mitchell. On the north side, north is facing to the right. To the south is Cheshire Hillside Village. As you can see here, this is the northeast corner of Cheshire Hillside Village. There is one single-family residential home sort of sandwiched between our property and Cheshire Hillside Village that takes access through a right-of-way through the applicant's parcels to the East Mitchell Avenue. To the east is vacant land for the most part, and to the north, again, just off our sheet here, are apartment complexes fronting on Route 10. The property pitches from west to east or from top to bottom on this sheet, ranging from approximately 230 at the high point down to about 190 to the east. The entire site drains to one of 2 wetland corridors. To the south, there is a stream that runs between the single-family property and our site. And there's also an intermittent watercourse to the north that picks up the large portion of the whatever road drainage sort of informally drains through the site into this drainage intermittent watercourse. What we're proposing on this property is 56-unit development consisting of 5 buildings shown here in this reddish color. The two buildings are referred to as buildings 1 and 5 have 10 units, and the 3 on the eastern side of the property have 12 units. And what we're looking to do with this is a couple things. One is improve the town's access along the end of East Mitchell Avenue. So we're looking to pick up where East Mitchell is right in front of our nearest building, widen it to a 30-foot wide road, and then construct a new cul-de-sac. All that would be deeded to the town upon completion and acceptance by the council. And that cul-de-sac, that new cul-de-sac would provide driveway access to the parking areas associated with the 5 buildings. We do have 2 spaces total per unit. It will be 96 surface spaces and 16 garage spaces shown here. Each building has a landscaping plan, foundation plantings plan, and we're also providing street and shade trees along the parking areas and surrounding the cul-de-sac, and then surrounding the buildings in certain areas. We are leaving the driveway to the single-family residential home that goes through a right-of-way in place. We're not looking to relocate that or disturb the location of that driveway. And we are providing for an emergency access to the Cheshire Hillside Village properties. The applicant has obtained an agreement with Cheshire Hillside Village to provide for that emergency access in the event that for some reason the cul-de-sac is inaccessible on East Mitchell Avenue. I'm trying to be brief here just because I know the hour is late. So if I skip over something, forgive me. From a utility perspective, we are going to be serving these properties with public water and sanitary sewer. Sanitary sewer is located on the southern side of the property. All buildings are being collected and conveyed by traditional gravity sewer lines to the existing sewer main. We have received approval for feasibility from the WPCA. And in terms of storm drainage, we're providing 3 discharges of storm drainage. The first of which is going to be a portion of the roadway that gets collected, new drainage, which is none today, and routed through the site and discharging to the intermittent stream that I mentioned before is where water from the road goes today. And from the development of the site, including the cul-de-sac, we are collecting and conveying via traditional pipe and catch basin system to 2 stormwater quality basins, which will provide for detention and water quality volume within the basins themselves, such that there's no increases in runoff for up to the 100-year storm in accordance with your regulations. We also provide water quality in the form of contact stormwater oil grit separators prior to discharge into the basin. Each basin will include a sediment forebay where any coarse sediments that don't get captured in the oil grit separator are allowed to be collected and easily cleaned out of the basins. And each basin has an outlet control structure discharging to a level spread or discharge so that the velocities exiting the basin, stormwater velocities, are below 2 feet per second, so they'll have no erosive component. In terms of sediment erosion control, we have a detailed sediment erosion control plan showing how we're going to handle runoff during construction. It includes construction entrance pads, silt fence, hay bales, diversion swales, bringing them to the stormwater basins for collection and retention of stormwater and sediments. I ran through that really quickly, and I apologize, but I do know that some of the public may have some comments or questions, and commission members as well. Along with, I'd like to be able to get Dave Sullivan's testimony, and if you don't mind as well. So if you have any questions about the site plan, I know that was quick, but I'd be happy to answer them. Or if you want me to just keep on going, we can.
One quick question.
Sure.
During the potential construction phase, what happens to the access for that landlocked property between the 2 developments?
This property back here?
Yeah, how do they get out while you're constructing?
So that's something that's going to be managed during construction, but there'll be opportunity to leave them suitable access. We're including easements to them within the current limits of the East Mitchell right-of-way, so that construction will have to occur in a manner that allows for them to have safe access out to East Mitchell Avenue. Alternately, if the homeowner during construction agrees, we can always provide them a separate temporary driveway as well. But the road can be constructed in a manner that allows for them to pass and repass.
When you talk about the emergency access for Hillside, is that
Sure.
something that's there now, or is that something you're additionally putting in?
That's something we're proposing as part of this application. Because we are at the end of a dead-end street, we're providing that.
They
means
have
of-
access to already up the street a little bit, right? Isn't there a way in from somewhere up the street? Yeah.
Yeah, their main driveway comes in here, but there's a
Okay.
roadway network that goes out to Route 10
Yeah.
if need be during an emergency situation in two different locations. One of which you probably recall seeing the chain across right near where the Chase Bank was recently approved. And then there's another access through, I believe, a daycare center or something to that effect. But regardless, the reason why we obtained and got permission for this connection was to provide for that in the event that the dead-end street somehow became impassable.
Commission members, anything else? Yeah.
I'm going to try to get this to work with Dave. I hope it works. Just bear with me. Dave, can you hear me? I can. Okay, can you talk? Let's see if the microphone picks you up.
Sure.
Oh.
Good evening, everyone. Again, for the record, it's David Sullivan with SLR, the Traffic Transportation Manager. I'll give a brief summary of the traffic study we conducted, and hopefully it comes through clearly. The initial study, the study included a review of the existing conditions, a review of future projected conditions, and lastly, an assessment of the impacts that would be generated by this development. One of the biggest challenges we had was the development of background or base condition counts, and that's been a challenge lately due to COVID's impact on traffic volumes. In this particular case, we worked with Connecticut Department of Transportation, utilized a new count, which was done during COVID in September of 2020, and we also utilized a count done before COVID at the Maplecroft Shopping Center driveway opposite the proposed Chase Bank from 2016. We worked with CONDOT to bring both of those counts to current levels, 2020 levels at the time, and make adjustments for COVID, which were primarily associated with traffic passing East Mitchell Avenue. Once that was behind us, we added the traffic for Chase Bank to develop a no-build or background condition. We then looked at what the site would generate in terms of traffic to and from the 56 multifamily units, and based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers, a total of 21 trips in and out in the morning, or 22 trips in and out in the afternoon peak hours were estimated. We assigned those to the analysis intersections on Route 10, conducted level of service analyses, which, as I'm sure you know, is from A to F, like school grades. And we compared the build and no build results. What we found is that there would be no change to the levels of service at either intersection. At East Mitchell, the level of service D, exiting East Mitchell onto Route 10 exists today. That level of service would still be level of service D. And at Maplecroft signalized intersection, it's generally overall level of service B, certain movement at level of service D or E during peak hours. All of those levels of service would remain the same. So in summary, this multifamily housing in general, particularly at this scale, is not a large traffic generator compared to the volume of traffic on Route 10. And what we found was that conditions would not change significantly with the addition of the traffic from this particular proposal. So that's my summary. happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, you can move forward. Right? Thank you.
Okay, commission members, questions for Mr. Sullivan? None? Okay.
Dave, we're moving on for now. Good. I'll call you back if questions from the public come up.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Bye.
Todd's next.
Oh, yeah, of course. My name is Todd Clark. I'm from Blue Moon Design, 168 Main Street in Terryville. And put this up here. As you can see, probably you can't, but so basically we're going.
Excuse me, sir. They're trying to look too, so.
I'm sorry. I'll get over on this side. See what I can knock over. So basically, using traditional forms and details within the building, quickly going through that, we're thinking of a pale yellow vinyl siding, and then the upper detailed area gables would be vertical vinyl siding. The roofing would be called a weatherwood, which would be similar to the color of my sweater, and basically charcoal colored shutters as far as the look. And basically, I'll go to the plan. This first page basically shows the 10 unit. It has a basement area that would have self-storage units that would be available to the tenants. And then the opposite side would be 2 units here. We used sort of a quad plan, a 4 unit per floor. What that does for us is it mitigates a lot of the noise in between the tenants instead of like a townhouse row thing where you have to be concerned about noise. So basically there's a sound wall, as you can see by the double wall here. The kitchen and utility spaces are all towards the center of the unit to provide sound control, but also to allow the exterior 2 sides to get as much sunlight as possible. So along with that, on the upper floors, all these units are primarily the same. So basically the concept is every unit will have a patio or porch. And by stepping the building, you can create privacy for each unit so that they're not looking at the neighbors and all that sort of stuff. So basically, as far as the layout, that's what we're doing. There's a common corridor here that's open to the air that should help mitigate sound and also make for a little safer fire separations between the units. So very quickly, that's what it is. Any questions?
Pricing on these yet, or
I'm sorry, what?
what are these going to go for?
Okay.
What's the max height of these buildings?
The 12 unit, which will be the tallest, would be less than 40 feet because I recognize that in the zoning. So the 10 unit, obviously you take the mean, it's going to be a lot less than 40. The 12 unit is really the tallest one. And we basically are going to keep the highest point less than 40. That was the intent.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Want to continue on your group?
For the record, Bernie Pellegrino again. Just want to briefly go over the affordability plan. Which we'll address right now as well.
Excuse me, sir. Could
Yes,
you
sir.
pull that down so we can see you?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Maybe just slide that easel back just a little bit. Is that good, or am I still blocked?
Well, Lou can't see either, so.
I peek at him every now and then this way. I'll move. So good evening again. I wanted to go over the affordability plan, which I submitted as part of the application, just briefly. I know that Mr. Volker provided a copy of this plan to Attorney D'Onofrio, who I know represents the commission. He's reviewed the plan for its conformity with your regulations, and I think he's responded that the plan does meet the requirements of the regulatory scheme that we're operating under. I didn't recreate the wheel with the plan. It's a plan I've utilized before in other instances. I adopted it obviously slightly to meet the requirements of your regulations. It requires that 25%, as your regulations require, of the units be designated and deed restricted as affordable units, which, as you know, under the regulation requires the annual income of families who would own or rent equal to or less than 80% of the mean area income in this area of the state. We'd have 3 units and 4 of the buildings, 2 units in the 5th, for a total of 14 units. They'd be interspersed, equally throughout the building and throughout the property. Using the current data, income data, and data that's utilized for, the typical expenses related to units of this size, under the requirements of the plan, which mirrored, by the way, the requirements under the state affordable housing guidelines for calculating, in this case, rental values. If I didn't mention it earlier, it's anticipated that these would be rental units. So the rental units for the affordable units would be $1,492, approximately $1,500 per month per unit. The market rate units would be about $2,200 a month, $2,150 to $2,200. So that's the difference. That's the answer, hopefully, to your question. All of that data is contained in the plan. The schedules, again, that have been utilized. It'll look, I think it should look familiar to you from the plan you received with the project you recently approved. So that's the affordability plan. Hopefully the answer to your question, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have on the affordability component.
Mr. Tedesco,
Mr.
sorry.
Cogan, who is responsible for implementing the affordability plan on a continuing basis?
The applicant and would be the responsible party for the administration of the plan, compliance with the advertising requirements, documentation of income, and all is proposed for all of the requirements under the plan. They would typically be working with, the town clerks to make sure all of that data is made available to members of the public and to this commission to report compliance. I think it's typically an annual compliance reporting requirement.
Yeah, under the affordability plan, I'm sorry, for the record, Mike Glidden, the applicant will identify the administrator. The administrator each January will provide a report to the town. And so obviously the HUD numbers that you're based on your affordability, they change each year. So they may go up, they may go down. Their reporting will reflect whatever the current HUD numbers are when a unit becomes available for rent. So that's the other thing. So they can rent the 14 affordable units, and let's say those 14 tenants stay there for 2-3 years. That number is locked in for what they signed on for their lease. However, when it goes up to the next tenant, when they vacate the property, that number can go up or go down based on the HUD numbers, in which they would report, we're still following the affordability plan, we're still doing the income verifications, et cetera, and this is the new number we're operating under.
And so if the owners sold the building, I guess the buyers would have the same responsibility to continue the affordability plan?
Yes, they would then have to take over for the administrator's role and the reporting roles pursuant to the affordability plan and the deed restriction recorded in the land records at the time the project comes online would reflect that fact, that those requirements run with the land.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any other questions? No.
Okay. Moving along, the third application is the re-subdivision app. This is, you just heard one with the prior application under Connecticut General Statute 8-18. A re-subdivision is required if you're adding additional lots, if you're affecting area for public use, which you just heard, and or if you affect a street layout, affect the layout of a street in town. And in this case, we fall into that third category because the existing terminus of the right-of-way for East Mitchell Ave that Ryan described earlier. So you had that strip which he showed in the, I think, first map. Sorry. The strip of land which you showed in that first map, right? Which is the existing right-of-way that terminates here. Obviously, which total is about 4,000 square feet. We would be creating and dedicating a new right-of-way, which is about 9,500 square feet. So we're affecting the street layout, and therefore a re-subdivision application is required because this would be the new road. So similar to the one you heard earlier, it's kind of a minor technicality, but required by state law. So we filed the application. We also requested, if you're inclined to approve the applications tonight, I also made a request pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 8-24 for a favorable referral, hopefully, to your legislative council, because the net of this swap that we're proposing, new dedicated land for a street, as opposed to the existing right-of-way, is this little parallelogram, or whatever the heck the geometric shape is called, of 480 square feet, which extends east of the proposed new cul-de-sac. We're requesting that little piece be abandoned. In order for that to happen, to abandon that section of the right-of-way would have to go to legislative council. We would ask, if you're so inclined, to make a favorable referral to legislative council. Obviously, that wouldn't happen until everything is done, the road is built, which is proposed to be built in accordance with town standards, and dedicated, and that little 480 square feet parcel would be, the right-of-way would be abandoned and would become part of the project. That's it. Happy to answer any questions you might have on those last two pieces to this applications that we've submitted.
Commission members, any questions? No? Okay. You all set with your application? I can go to the public?
We are. Thank you.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this application? Come on up, would you state your name and address for the record?
Morning, Fran Shipper Jr., 54 East Mitchell Ave. A few questions with the road and, how they planned for the traffic on that road. Right now, it's a one-lane road. At the top of the street, the tenants that rent, they park in the street. Going into Hillside Village, a lot of the healthcare workers, they will park on the opposing side of the street, and the people pulling out, one at a time can pull in. So I've personally sat there 15 minutes waiting to pull out onto Route 10. How do they plan on getting around that? And with putting in this much traffic?
How do you want to handle it? Are we going to have Dave, Mr. Sullivan answer through the phone? Is that something you have? Yeah, there could be some other questions too. So why don't have him start jotting down the questions.
All right, thank you. We're going to wait for a minute.
So also, with this, I know they said that this is overgrown. Yeah, the lots, the people that live there passed on. We called it wooded. It's just the area where the house was. Yeah, it wasn't maintained because nobody was there. Now, my father, decorated Vietnam veteran, bought this property years ago, and because of the quiet nature of that street, there was only a few people on it. Now you're talking about putting up 40-foot structures where in his golden years of his life, where he wants to spend time in the backyard, gardening and doing things in a quiet nature, what is that going to do? Now you're going to take down all the trees and everything else around there. What is that going to do for that property? What's it going to do for his surroundings? Anybody, that you got to take that into consideration as well. Is there going to be, how close is this going to be to the property? Where's the privacy going to be? I know it's easy for everybody to not worry about it because it's not in your backyard, but lifelong resident, 47 years, and all of a sudden my parents can't go in their backyard and have the privacy that they once had because you want to put in low-income housing. Not you, but, so how does this kind of, what do we do? How does my father, what does this do for his property value? What does it do for just his privacy? And, not to mention, like I said, he not going to be able to do the things that he enjoys doing, that he's done his entire life. One of them shooting archery in the backyard. With these people moving in, do you think that they're going to really look over and not complain about somebody shooting archery? I mean, and these are the things that he enjoys at this time.
Yeah, we understand, and unfortunately, the other property owners have a right to do what they wish with their property as long as it meets the regulations, and
Right.
That's why we're here tonight to listen to the proposal, and eventually we will all make a decision, taking everyone's comments in.
Okay.
So
One other thing that I just did want to point out on 74, the structure that is still standing, there are bodies of family members that are buried there. So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
on 74,
74, which is the furthest house, the structure that's standing all the way at the end, there are 2 family members that are buried on that property.
Okay.
So I just, want to let you know and how they handle to, if they were planning on exhuming them and then relocating them and doing something, in that nature. They are there. That was something that years ago on that farmland was legal to do. So that's, another issue. The road, that's, if they're talking about widening the road, okay? I don't understand how they're going to do that. Where are they going to take that space up? That's something that's a huge factor as well. And now they're talking about putting in sewer. How, we have septic. So now what is that going to do for us? Are we going to have to tie in with this now all of a sudden? And that's something that's going to have to be looked into. And I'm sure that by zoning, we would probably have to.
Yeah, you don't have to. It goes by your house, but you don't have to. If you ever changed your property, if it was water, I think you'd have to hook up to water if you ever subdivided your property. But as far as just because it goes by you, you're not obligated to hook up to it. You
Well,
might
I
want
just-
to, but you're not obligated to.
Right. Well, I just ask that everybody takes that into consideration about, the privacy. And if this is something that you do decide you go forward with, okay, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with bringing in any low-income housing into our town. I don't. If you do, what can be done to keep some privacy for my parents?
Okay.
They-
Brian went pretty quick. I don't know if you have any, I know you'll address the questions afterwards, but maybe you could talk a little bit about if there's any kind of buffers or anything put in for some of the neighboring properties.
Do you want me to try to tackle some of those as I can?
How do you want to do with that? Or we'll probably have a lot more questions coming in. So yeah, let's do it all and yeah. So anyone else from the public wishing to speak? I just need you to come up to the mic and name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Robert Weaver. I live at 419 East Mitchell Avenue, and I'm the Vice President of the Cheshire Hillside Village Condominium Association. We've got two concerns with this project. First of all, I agree with the last speaker. I didn't quite catch his name. But there is a big traffic problem on that road. We have 82 condominium units that are part of Cheshire Hillside Village. Plus you have 60 apartments that are part of the other section, which belong to John Capone. You add that up, you can see the amount of cars that are using East Mitchell Avenue. There's easily between 4:30 and 6 o'clock, if sometimes 15-minute backup to get out onto East Mitchell there. Now you're proposing dumping 56 more units, 2 cars apiece onto East Mitchell. Maybe widening the road, but there is going to be a major traffic backup at that intersection. The other thing that we're concerned about is that we're talking about using storm drains, draining them into the stream there that passes between the Thiel property and the condominium association driveway. There's already a flooding problem on that road during heavy rainstorms. The fire department has been there several times for flooding in some of the lower units where the stream backs up, goes down across Star Road into some of the lower apartments. So these are things that we'd like to make the board aware of and we think have to be addressed if this is going to be approved by the town. There was also some talk here about an emergency exit. We weren't aware of that. As far as I know, the board of directors of the condominium association was never approached by anybody as far as creating, we were totally unaware of this till we got, some of our unit members got letters about this commission. So I'm not sure who said that they had spoken to the management of the association, but we have not been discussed. Nothing's been discussed with us about emergency use down there. So we just like to make that board aware of that. And John, did you want to come up here? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Esposito, 383 East Mitchell Avenue, acting treasurer for the association. I just want to correct Bob on the numbers. John Capone with HUD is 100 units, our 82 units, and the proposed 56 units. That's 238 units. So that's only one car per family. And my greatest concern is the road is an undersized road with drainage problems throughout the winter. And I would assume in the 56 units, there'll be children going to school. That means a school bus or buses will probably have to travel down East Mitchell Avenue. I will hold the rest of my concerns and questions tonight, shorten this, but I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is Deela Donner, and I live in 445 East Mitchell Avenue. I don't think the school buses will go down that road. I work with the school buses. There's no way they're going down Mitchell Avenue, especially in the winter. And also bringing up the privacy. We're kind of tucked behind everything there. It's almost like the hidden jewel of Cheshire. We really don't want all these cars coming in and out. That's it.
Thank you. Sure, come on up to the mic, please.
My name is Dolores Hanicelli. I live at 477 East Mitchell Avenue. My main concern is children. These children might not get a school bus coming down or school buses coming down. So does that mean that they're going to be walking up this road to get a school bus and coming home, walking back down if their parents aren't there? And if their parents are there, a school bus can't drop off those children like that. There's no way, there's no room. And the children are the main concern. If they're walking up that road and people, I want to make you aware of it, these people are mostly in their 80s. Are you going to let children walk up a road where people in their 80s are driving? I hope you take the children into consideration.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is Roseanne Krasnowski. I live at 1741 Musso View Avenue. And I'd like to thank the commission. Clearly, there are a lot of concerns about this case, and you have your work cut out for you. I am here I'm not as someone with a stake in this property, just to say that I am glad to know that Cheshire has an affordable housing plan, and I'm hoping to see more plans like this come before you. So I hope you'll give that consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Mara Tu, and I live at 1041 Dannard Place in Cheshire. And similar to the speaker who came up before, I personally don't have a stake in this, but I'm also really excited to hear that Cheshire is working on affordable housing units. And I think that with the development of these affordable housing units, I think it's on the developers to make sure that the residents' issues are addressed, like the privacy, your issues with the safety concerns and traffic controls. But it sounds like it's in good hands. And so I'm just hoping that a project like this it's a win-win thing with people being able to move into Cheshire and have a great education while also having great neighbors and relationships with their neighbors as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, guys, you want to tackle some questions here?
Oh, 1 second. Hey, Dave, you still here?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to start with the traffic-related comments or questions with regard to East Mitchell, or?
Yes, sure. I think the easiest thing to do, again, Dave Sullivan, from SLR. I'll go through a couple of the details from the traffic study because I think many of the questions were very similar, just to put the facts out there. So right now, after our adjustments on Route 10, there's about 1,200 and some odd cars in an hour that are on Route 10. In the afternoon peak hour, there's over 1,400 cars. Today, exiting and entering at East Mitchell Avenue during the morning peak hour, our count was 43 vehicles. In the afternoon, that was 53 vehicles. And again, these are a day, so some days may be a little more, some days may be a little less. And at the time when there's 43, we're projecting an increase of 21. When there's 53, we're increasing projecting an increase in 22. So what's important to know is when we're leaving, and the 21 are leaving in the morning, that's when the slightly lower traffic is on Route 10, albeit still heavy. And in the afternoon, when the slightly heavier traffic on Route 10, the 1,450 hourly vehicles, we have most of our traffic entering East Mitchell. So what does this all mean? Well, as I mentioned, we look at levels of service, and in levels of service, the letter bans a range of delays. And when I talked about these average delays, what we found statistically from our model is that today you could expect the average delay for all the vehicles exiting of around 23.5 seconds. Now, some is more, some are left. Left turners will wait longer than right turners. That'll increase approximately 2 seconds when we add the traffic from this development. So we'd be going from 23 change to 25 change for average delays during the morning peak hour. In the afternoon peak hour, you have a similar range, but it's slightly higher again because the traffic is slightly higher on Route 10. So our average delay without this development is about 28 seconds. And when we add the traffic from this development, the average delay would increase by about 1.5 seconds or 29.5 seconds. So that's statistically what the impact of this development would be. Understandably, traffic is busy on Route 10, and there are times today when someone's exiting out of East Mitchell Avenue, and they may get there and the road is blocked a little bit from momentarily from queues or something of that nature from the traffic signal. So we understand that it's not a level of service A coming out of there. It's a level of service D during the peak hours, and it will be maintained at a level of service D. So hopefully that gives some color to the big picture of my initial summary. I'd be happy to drill down even further or answer anything more specific if you would like. But Ryan, I think that kind of covers the concerns from the 2 or 3 comments that I heard.
Thanks, Dave.
I think we're going to have some questions too. So, Mr. Ricardo.
That 23 seconds, is that a delay on top of an average wait time, or is that the wait time once you get to the intersection?
Dave, the question is the 23 seconds in your model the delay on top of the average?
Yeah.
Or what is, explain the 23 seconds that you referred to in your report. What does that mean?
That means that as you pull up to, you're coming out of this, the existing development. You come out of the driveway, you take a left on East Mitchell, and you're heading towards Route 10. From the moment you stop till the moment you get on Route 10 is on average 23.5 seconds. So there may be somebody there that got there before you, and they're at the end of their 23 seconds, or what it might be. But that's your total delay. It's called a control delay, which includes the time you spend in a queue, the time you spend making the decision, and the time you spend making the actual movement.
So good. Thanks.
Mr. Natale.
Two things following up on that. How did you come up with the 23 seconds? Because I know you're not here, but I see some folks in the audience shaking their heads in disbelief.
How did you come up with the 23 seconds, Dave? Because some of the audience members are shaking their heads in disbelief. That's from Commissioner Natale.
Yes, that's based on the traffic models which are developed. It's a series of statistical calculations that's based on many things. Most importantly, it's based on the volume of traffic that's passing by, how that traffic varies over that hour, and the volume of traffic that's exiting East Mitchell, the geometry of East Mitchell, and what the approach distribution is. So is it coming at a steady pace? Is it coming with a slight peak within the peak? So those are just a few of the factors that go into the model. There's really many more, but those are the most important ones.
So there were no direct observations made. This is all based on statistical models?
So this is based on no observations made. This is based on statistical models.
It is based on statistical models. We did do observations, but I would not want to rely on those because they were done during COVID and during the peak of COVID before the vaccinations when we did this back in 2020. As a matter of fact, the counts we made, we increased those quite substantially from the conditions that we observed and counted in 2020. For example, if bear with me 1 second. In the morning, we increased the northbound traffic by 32% and the southbound traffic by 48% by using some information that Condoc provided to it. And in the afternoon, we increased it by in both directions by about 25%. So we did some substantial adjustments. So the observations were on that lower base. So I wouldn't rely on those, although they were similar to what the model had predicted. Again, but it was a lower base.
So this may be outside of the norm, but can you have somebody go and sit there during the two peak times and see how long it's really taking people to get out?
So this may be outside the norm, but can you have somebody sit there during the two peak times to see how long it takes for people to get out?
Absolutely. We do that, and I would expect that things are, well, we have another kind of blip, but I would assume that things are much normaler now than they were in September of 2020, certainly. So we will arrange to do that.
Thank you. And I don't want to speak for the rest of the commission, but that's definitely something I'd like to see.
And not on a weekend and not on, say, a holiday or something like that. Obviously on a regular
During the peak
scheduled
hours that you're
workday,
representing.
peak hours, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and I don't know if this falls under you, Dave, or somebody else, but what is the width of the street, the existing street?
What is the width of the street? I can answer that. It's approximately 26 feet at the entrance with Route 10. Not unusual for roads that predate current subdivision standards with 30-foot wide roads.
Gotcha. So the plan is not to widen the street, it's just to widen where the cul-de-sac and the terminus is going to be?
That's correct. Our plan is to begin the widening the road roughly in the
Have you guys observed these parked cars on the street?
The widening's beginning in the middle of our westernmost building. In terms of parked cars, we have not observed them, but we're not aware of any parking bans on the road. So we would expect, unless the legal traffic authority has a different opinion on the matter, that they'll continue to be allowed for on-street parking.
Michael, do we have anything from the police department?
No, I can actually follow up with Neil on that on parking on street, because that's a condition I wasn't aware of.
There's no parking on that street. It's not wide enough, but if they car park there, There's no way you'd get another car by. It'd be illegally to park there.
I don't know that there's a parking ban on the street. But we have to look
Right.
into that.
And I can ask.
But there's not a parking ban, but, there's, a lot of things that aren't legal that get done, Police force is only so big, they can only do so much, I mean, we used to have traffic studies. We used to have a lot of things. I'm kind of disappointed tonight, sitting here. After all the years I sat on this board, we don't have anything here, all this stuff that's going on. No, nothing, just a testimony tonight.
It's right here.
Well, we have that, but yeah.
Traffic study.
Yeah, that's what, on all the applications tonight? I mean, well, that's my opinion. That's what I'm giving you. I'm very dissatisfied with information that is given to our town planner, that is given to us at the 11th hour, 99% of the time. I'm really disappointed. We used to have a real smooth ship going, but there's no more feet from engineers and so forth and so on. Nobody's feet is being held to the fire. Even with the maps and all the stamp maps and all, we used to get all that stuff. All we get is a lot of talk. But if you went to court, what will we have? We don't even have a tape tonight, So, well, I haven't heard it pop off. I don't know. We've been here how many hours? Nobody's changed or reloaded. That must be quite a tape.
So
okay. Anyway, I've said enough. I got it off my mind. I think the town planner probably.
Mr. Kurtz.
I have a question too. I want to ask Mike. There's nothing up here legally that we could ask them about sidewalks for a street like this, right? There's nothing. We could ask.
You can ask, but however,
But nothing
there's
legally.
court cases that say, you're limited to the property that you're dealing with. You
Yep.
can't ask for off-site improvements
Right.
unless the applicant agrees to that, which, I won't speak for the applicant on
Sure.
that. But as your staff, I would not advise you to color beyond the limits of this property.
Okay.
And then just follow up on the comment previously. I'll follow up with Neil as a local traffic authority to ask about that. And then the last thing, this meeting is being recorded digitally. So,
Yes, don't go.
so it's actually being saved directly onto a thumb disk. That's right by Lou's seat is the recorder that
Technology. We used to have the tapes, and the
Yep.
tapes are gone, so that's
The
why-
tapes are
that's what
gone.
it is.
So we have it all. It's being recorded.
Yeah.
There is a digital record. So
Mr. Bone.
I would like to know not the width of the road going out to Route 10, but I'd like to know the width of the right-of-way going the entire length from the new subdivision where the subdivision is going to connect to Route 10.
I believe the right of way is 50 feet wide with the exception. So the right of way as shown in our property survey for the majority of East Mitchell Road is 50 feet, and the part that we're seeking abandonment and increasing to the cul-de-sac, town center cul-de-sac, is only 30 feet wide. Sorry, Matt. The right of way on East Mitchell Ave going out from our site to Route 10 is 50 feet in width, with the exception of a narrow strip that's only 30 feet in width that we're looking to remove and construct the new cul-de-sac. So the right of way is the 50 feet for the most part. The part that's 30 feet, we're looking to get rid of and build a cul-de-sac.
Off the property. Off the property.
To the west?
From where your property starts, yes, to Route 10, what is the town right of way today?
I believe 50 feet.
All the way to Route 10, you feel it's 50 feet.
I can verify that with our surveyor, but.
Okay, because, and I'm sorry I didn't get the lady's name. she has a very valid point with the children walking up to, if the bus is required to stop on Route 10 rather than come down that cul-de-sac. She has a very valid point that that road is narrow. And there is a danger to the children. And that would be one of my concerns, not necessarily to require the developer do it, but to be sure that if is necessary, the town would have the ability to put sidewalks up to Route 10.
Understood. And I'll verify that for you for the next meeting, Matt, but again, it's 50 feet wide in the area here. Out to Route 10, I can get a definitive answer for you.
I said to Mr. Selmont, then I'll go Bricado, then I'll go Tedesco.
Yeah. I don't know if Dave's still on the phone there or not. He could always answer next time if it's more convenient. He mentioned that it's a level D service coming out of Route 10. There's no traffic light there now. Is a level D service going to be, is Connecticut DOT going to approve that? Is that acceptable coming out of that street?
Okay, Dave, the question is, given that it's a level of D, a level service D entering onto Route 10, will the DOT find that acceptable? I think the gist of the question is, would a traffic light be warranted? Is that fair?
Yeah, would the DOT look at that and say, oh, no, because I know you get approval here, you get approval there, and then the DOT is the last one to approve it. Well, they wouldn't approve
Well,
it.
they wouldn't have this one trigger DOT.
But
review.
what would the DOT, let's say the property did empty out into Route 10, what would the DOT suggest at that point or require?
Okay, the question is if this was a DOT style review, or if it had an encroachment permit or something to that effect, what would you believe their requirements might be for this intersection? Dave?
If you want, if you could.
Sorry, I was on mute, Ryan.
Go ahead.
I've been talking for 30 seconds to myself, so. If I was in DOT's heads on this, I would suggest that they would be fine. Basically, it doesn't have enough traffic where they would even consider a signal. So if we asked for a signal, we would get a flat out no right off the bat. And they're accustomed to unsignalized intersections on arterials such as Route 10 operating at level service D, which is satisfactory in their case. In this particular case, if it was a new driveway without some history, they might want us to make sure that the geometry of the road, the radii and things like that were designed not problematically. So in this case, there's no problems there today. Level service D is satisfactory, and it wouldn't warrant any other traffic control. So I think that would be how this would come down if they review it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bricado.
This is for Mike. Who determines in the town if the school bus can go down that road or not? And how do we get that answered?
We could talk to the Board of Ed and see who's in charge of transportation of the Board of Ed and connect with either Durham Bus, et cetera, to see. Also, maybe something for the applicant, they can demonstrate, maybe if you're asking them, one of the comments earlier was the right-of-way width for East Mitchell. They can show on a simple survey coming from Route 10 to the cul-de-sac, the turning radius for a school bus. That's an easy template to produce. They can show the school bus can get from point A to point B, but more importantly, if there's any obstructions of the road, let's just say that that's a perfect scenario, then you can see whether it's really tight. And if the school bus can't turn at the cul-de-sac, obviously, then the cul-de-sac may need to be changed. Sorry.
Do we have any rights to, I wouldn't say force, but have the school make the bus goes down there if it's safe and it can pass?
No, I mean, that's going to be a determination. Normally, from a school transportation perspective, if it's a town road, they go down the town road. If it's a private road, then they will not provide service. They'll service will end wherever the public road ends. So in this case, if they were to say they weren't deeding the town the cul-de-sac, and it was just the existing kind of terminus of the road, the school would say, we get down to there, and if we can't, we'll have to figure out a way to turn the bus around, et cetera. But in this case, it's a public road down to the development. They will probably provide service to that development.
I just don't want to lose track of some of the other comments that we got from public members but either way.
Can I called on Mr. Tedesco and then let him have the floor, and then it's all yours.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. That may surprise you, but I will be brief. Our regulation, in fact, addresses school bus stops. We were given a copy of the regulations, and it's in sections 44A.7.2D. Says in determining whether or not to approve the application, the commission shall also consider the following factors. D, whether the pedestrian circulation system is adequate for the pedestrian traffic anticipated in the development and incorporates all necessary safety precautions for children walking to and from schools or bus stops. So that's a major issue in the regulation itself.
What was that full number again?
It was 44 capital A.7.2 subsection D. It was in our packet.
Yeah, and I think it applies. It may be referring to on-site pedestrian traffic to the school bus pickup, but I would agree.
Now, do you want to go to some of the answer some of the questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to be brief, knowing that
This is going to be held open to it, all the new stuff we have. So this is not something we have to, and some of the stuff you might have to get answers from.
EJ.
Yes.
So I'll start probably a little bit in reverse order, but with regard to drainage and the condition of flooding along the brook, which is on the south side of the property. We're aware that brook has experienced some pretty major flooding incidents from discussions with town engineering staff and also just evidence of scour along the brook. So one thing we made sure when we designed our stormwater, a lot of this stormwater from the site today drains into that brook upstream of the driveway crossing for the Thiel property. That's the single-family residential home. We made sure that as we collected runoff from our site, put it in our stormwater basin, that the discharge would be downgrading of that crossing. So from the point where we discharge near the stream, there are no more obstructions or culverts or driveway crossings or road crossings that would be impacted. On top of that, we do demonstrate that we're reducing the rate and volume of runoff from our development as a result of our proposed drainage conditions. In terms of the question about privacy, we do have one, I believe the neighbor who spoke is located to the northeast. Forget about this. This is an inset in our plan. But the building nearest to that particular neighbor is over 25 feet away from the property line, 25 feet being the setback in the affordable housing zone. And in this particular unit, the portion of the building that faces that neighboring property is only 2 stories tall. We're taking advantage of a grade change so that it's 2 stories tall on the western side and 3 stories tall on the eastern side away from the property. So the view that the neighbor would see in terms of this house would be 2 stories with a pitched roof. So it would be far less than the 40 feet that you may see in some of these other buildings on the eastern side of the property. We're also providing a little bit of landscape screening in the form of some arborvitaes and white pines along the property line between the building and the house, which is obscured by our view over here. So we are providing for some screening. The size and shape of the house or the structure located nearest to that property is perhaps a little bit more modest in scale than the 40 feet that was discussed earlier. Let's see. And I believe a lot of the other comments were related to traffic, road width, road design. And in terms of the emergency access, I believe some of the homeowners said that they weren't aware of the emergency access agreement that the applicant has. Perhaps, Bernie, you may want to speak to that.
We do have a written agreement with the property owners, and I'll submit a copy of the easement and the option agreement to construct that emergency access agreement to Mr. Glidden, along with some of the other information that you've asked us to provide, which we will. And unless you have any questions, any further or issues or anything else you'd like us to work on.
One of the big things that somebody mentioned was that there's potential to have bodies buried. This is a new one for me. I think that needs to get addressed. I don't know what the regulations, the laws, or anything are on that, but that's got to get addressed.
Yeah, just he's got the mic. I'll go to the public in a sec.
We'll look into that. Otherwise, we're certainly prepared to put the applications on the table and allow us to come back on the 25th, 24th, and provide you between now and then with any additional information.
Yeah, the earlier the better would be on the best side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mr. Mercado.
Is there anything keeping you from taking that one building and moving it more east to give more of a buffer to that homeowner? I don't know. They're not numbered. That one, yes.
We do have a wetland restriction. There's an intermittent water course through here. So we're up against the 50-foot upland review area, so we can't get any closer to that wetland. Oh,
Tom, do you have a question
we can look at some additional vegetation and things of that nature.
Some additional screening there, maybe possibly.
Good. Or if there's trees that you can leave up that are already there, taller trees or whatever, look at that, please.
We can certainly look
Thank
into
you.
that. Yep.
Mr. Samo.
Yeah, we talked about school buses coming down the road and turning in the cul-de-sac and everything else. Did the fire marshal take a look at that? Everything?
Yeah, so the fire marshal reviewed these plans, and they had a few comments that need to be addressed, but a lot of it was, for example, that the water mains be increased to an 8-inch diameter. Per code, town ordinances, water main will also loop into existing water main through emergency access. The fire marshals to approve the final hydrant layout. Mountable curbs to be installed in areas as determined by the fire chief. Fire lanes will be established in areas as determined by the fire chief. And the applicant work with the fire department to adjust radius concerning cornering into the project. And then, two more. One was to provide exterior light to identify buildings that had active fire alarm. His concern was due to the type of construction, if there's an event going on, they want to see, an alarm flashing in front of the building saying that the event is in this building and not the other building. And then last thing, the fire alarms are to be monitored, including flow switches to sprinkler system. And I apologize, we received these comments from the fire marshal at 3:45 this afternoon.
I was going to say,
So in discussing it with both Mike and Jack, they felt that these could be modifications to the plan. They didn't have any heartache if this was going to go forward tonight.
yeah, usually we usually see the letterhead from the fire department, but I see it now. And I'm assuming the applicant's going to agree to that or work with all of that and everything else.
We're going to work with the fire marshal's office, and I would like to add that the buildings are going to be fully sprinklered.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bohm.
In looking at the fire marshal's recommendation, I know they're busy, but for them to get to us 15 minutes before the close of business on the day of our public hearing is unacceptable. I think at that point they should be appearing before us, especially for a subdivision of this size so that we can question them directly on what their concerns are. In our code or ordinances call for an 8-inch main, does that mean that that main has to be replaced all the way to a 12-inch main up on Route 10? Or does that mean that from the point of connection, instead of 6-inch, it is increased to 8-inch?
From the point of connection, it's increased to 8 inches or greater. That's in conversations with Mike and Jack that's what they're looking for.
Thank you. And
They didn't have a concern with that. They wanted, importantly, within the new development, that those diameters of those pipes were increased. So, I mean, I can ask that question of Jack and Mike on that, but I asked that question. Do you want to run it out to Route 10, or do you just want it at the end of the project? Their comments were at the end of the project.
And I would add that the information provided by RWA in terms of pressure and flow data indicates a significant amount and availability of pressure and flow for firefighting purposes.
Mr. Bone.
And one final comment. I hate to agree with Woody, but I, for one, am really, and this is not your fault. This is your first meeting, and it's a long one. But we do need this information sooner than we're getting it, both from the different engineers that are presenting in front of us and from our own staff. We're trying to, learn what's going on in these subdivisions. You can't get this information and in 15 minutes make an informed decision. So, please, if we have to, we're going to just, I would suggest to the chairman that we stop the public hearings until we have the information and we can dissect it and make sure that we are making informed decisions. Thank you.
The public hearing is going to stop soon. It's not going to be closed. It's going to be, we're going to continue it till the 24th. Yeah, he's just answering a couple of questions that were brought up by the public. I do have to go to the public one more time. Mr. Shipwright had another comment. And again, I'm telling everyone, this is also going to be carried over till the 24th of January.
Okay, again, not to beat a dead horse, I know it's getting late. If somebody was to take a left coming out of that street too, if they're taking a left on Route 10, that 23 seconds, I don't know where they come up with that number. It's insane. Another thing is, during the cold weather months with the ice, they do the best they can maintaining. Hillside Village does the best that they can. There's always cars sliding off on the side of the road. It's dangerous. I worry about even what my parents having to pull out. So that's a huge concern with that street. People are constantly sliding off the side of the road. If there are kids, that is definitely potential for something dangerous. The other thing I would like to add, and this is just something that, so everybody's aware, the husband and wife that is buried on that property was one of the first African-American families that had moved into Cheshire that farmed that land. Now, with everything that's going on in the world today with the racial tension and everything else, I would hate for anybody to think that something ill is just going to get pushed through. And if this gets out and they blow it up into something that, it doesn't have to be. But if they just say, oh, we're just going to dig them up, this is something that really you need to take into consideration because it could be something bigger. So I would look into that. I just wanted to bring it to your attention and really take that into consideration. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are you guys all set for now? We'll continue on the 24th. Again, anything you can get to us before that would be great. Hello. Now entertain a motion to adjourn the public
So
hearing.
moved.
Moved by Mr. Kaderis, seconded by Mr. Natale. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, if anybody needs a little break, take it on your own. It's kind of late. I'd like to move right on. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Special Meeting for Monday, January 10th, 2022. Can I get a motion to accept the public hearing and regular meeting from December 13th, 2021?
Motion to approve both.
Motion by Mr. Natale, seconded by Mr. Bricato. Mr. Selma, sorry. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously with all 9 of us up here. Unfinished business. Anything on the communications that we have tonight? No. Unfinished business, number 1 is held open. Number 2, I'm pretty comfortable on voting on the Coleman Road application, Pinnacle Land Development. I assume everybody else is. We've had this for a while. Can we hear the motion for yea or recused? Yes. Mr. Bowman is recused.
Okay. So I'll do the special permit first at 791 Coleman Road, Pinnacle Land Development Applicant LLC, special permit for rear lot access. The Cheshire Planning and Zoning Commission find that the proposal to develop a rear lot access for the creation of 3 building lots is shown on plans entitled Subdivision of Tripolina Estate, 791 Coleman Road, Cheshire, Connecticut, revised through December 13th, 2021, are consistent with the requirements for rear lot access ways set forth within the Cheshire Subdivision regulations, the Cheshire zoning regulations. Hereby approve this application. And then for the,
So let's take that one first.
okay,
Moved by Mr. Talley, seconded by Mr. Bricato. This is just for the
rear lots.
rear lots. We probably should have done the other one first, but in case, whatever. It doesn't really matter how we do it, but any discussion on the rear lot for Coleman Road? Everything all right? No. Any discussion on this motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously with Mr. Bowman recusing himself. Now we'll take the next one.
So 791 Coleman Road, Pinnacle Land Development LLC subdivision application for a subdivision for the creation of 11 residential building lots. The Cheshire Planning and Zoning Commission find that the proposal to create 11 residential building lots is shown as plans entitled Subdivision for the Tripolina Estate, 791 Coleman Road, Cheshire, Connecticut, revised through December 13th, 2021, are consistent with the requirements set forth within the Cheshire Subdivision regulations and Cheshire zoning regulations. Hereby approve this application, condition upon compliance based on correspondence dated December 21st, 2022, from P. Bowman concerning engineering comments.
Moved by Mr. Natale, second by Mr. Kaderis. Discussion on this motion.
Just,
Mr. Natale.
just want to say one thing about it. I know we asked a lot of questions regarding the mines, and I want to thank the applicant, the engineers, the town attorney, everybody for weighing in and really educating us on the property in the area. So thank you.
Okay. Mr. I got on the line, Bricato, Selma.
Yeah, thank you. I did a little research on those mines and it looks to be fairly safe. Most of that main line that is really deep and is under hard rock. The state had done a lot of research. I found a document on it that's saying that there's nothing really to worry. The sinkhole that we had was from a vertical shaft. There's no vertical shafts ever mapped in that area. So we should be good with that. Thank you.
Mr. Selma.
I just want to echo those comments. I just want to thank the applicant for going through all the motions and entertaining all the questions, the ground penetrating radar and negotiating, I shouldn't say negotiating, but coming to an agreement with the engineers as far as the extra procedures for the foundation and everything else. Thank you. That's how government should work. People coming together and getting things done. Thank you.
Mr. Tesco.
Yeah, I just want to agree with that. I think the additional offer that was made by for the additional engineering work is an important part of our decision.
Okay. You guys took everything I wanted to say. I just echo everything. Yeah. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously with Mr. Bowman abstaining or recusing himself. I'm sorry. How would you guys feel about the Miller, Napolitano, and Wolf? Just Miller, Napolitano, and Wolf, you're recused from it anyway, so it doesn't matter to you. We have a motion. I'm pretty comfortable with it as long as everyone else. Can we hear the motion on that too, please?
Yeah. So you have 1953, 2037, and 261 Highland Avenue, 691 Dickerman Road, AK Stonebridge Crossing, Miller, Napolitano, Wolf LLC, and TriStar Development LLC application for re-subdivision due to changes made in areas previously designated as open space. The Cheshire Planning and Zoning Commission find the proposal for re-subdivision of Stonebridge Development as shown on plans entitled re-subdivision depicting lot line revisions to lots 3, 4, 5, and 7, pump station parcel and open space at Stonebridge Crossing, Highland Avenue, and Dickerman Road, Cheshire, Connecticut, prepared by SLR. Revision date December 8th, 2021 is consistent with the requirements set forth in the Cheshire subdivision regulations, the Cheshire zoning regulations, and hereby approve the application.
Move Mr. Talley, second by Mr. Bricato. Discussion on this motion. Pretty easy one, just changing some lot lines. Really not a big deal. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? And motion carries unanimously with Mr. Bowman recusing himself. Next, we held open new business, George Avenue pool for pediatric therapy.
You'll hear that in February.
February?
He's received some variances in the zoning board of appeals for this application.
Okay, the
And we just-
solar on McKee,
That'll be at your next meeting,
that'll be the 24th.
the 24th.
Okay. Request for waiver for public hearing. Is there someone here for that, or are we just taking it up? No. So can you just tell us a little bit about what they're
Yeah.
looking to do and what we're,
So they're planning, some of it's maintenance, replacing the sidewalks, the milling overlay of parking, driveway areas, new dumpsters enclosures, mailbox kiosk, widening of the fire lane, and addition of 21 parking spaces. Go ahead.
Why do they need 21 parking spaces? When we go through this and they do all the traffic and parking studies, they always say we have too much parking and now we don't have enough. Is this going to be a continuation on all these divisions that we do or subdivisions that come in?
So that's a good question for the applicant. I don't know. I didn't see.
That's why
what's-
they need to be here.
Yeah.
For this, even if they're requesting a waiver like this, like Matt says, we need to ask these questions. So
Okay.
I won't be voting for a waiver.
Okay.
I'll say I agree with
Sorry,
Mr.
Mr.
Bricato. My sticking point coming in here after reading the staff's comments was the 21 parking spaces. I'm not sure about the capacity there, but also there's neighbors. Where are they going to put the parking? There's going to be lighting. I don't see waiving the public hearing.
because of the additional parking is, yeah, I mean, we have no plan, we have no nothing really to look at. There could be, I remember when they did this, we did have some neighbor concerns.
This is just new business to schedule the hearing, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but they're asking for a waiver of the public hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't, what does everyone else think? I mean, we don't even have to take it. If we don't want to, we could just say no public hearing. We wouldn't have to vote on it at all.
That's correct.
How do you guys feel about the housing authority? I don't want to do it to the housing authority because it's a cost out of their pocket, but over here, we've heard there's considerable changes.
It's the nature of, I guess, what I have a general idea is the nature of the extent of it. If they're just going to put a new box parking spot in a place where there's already parking, it's not going to affect anything, and they're going to make it. Depends on the extent of this or changes.
But there's also nobody here to tell us anything, and I mean,
No plans, no nothing. It's just, we want to do all this work.
well, they still have to come to us. They're just asking for a waiver of the public hearing. So they would come to our regular meeting and we'd be able to ask all the
But,
questions.
but if we saw the
Whether-
layout where they want to put the parking and where the lighting might change,
Yeah.
I can say, hey, it's not going to affect anybody. We can say
Mr.
waive
Chairman.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be unreasonable to ask them to present something for the next meeting
Yeah.
And so that we could have enough information whether to give them the waiver or not.
Can we give them the option to say we could set a public hearing and they can come to the public hearing?
Well,
Or if they want to come to us and tell us so we can decide whether we want to do the
so,
public hearing?
so under statute, you have 65 days to set a public hearing and 35 days to, after you open the hearing to close it and 65 days to act. So you are well within your
But you have-
statutory timeframe to say,
You can go communicate with them
Come to the next-
tomorrow and
come to the
say,
next meeting.
would you like to come to our next meeting and with a plan and show us what you might want to do for us to look at or get the plan to us early, not at the next meeting.
Yeah.
But so at least then we could look at to see what we're looking at to decide on whether we want to have a public hearing or not. Because we really don't have anything and there's some concerns about neighboring properties, what could be there. Or they might just say, we'll come to the public hearing, we'll have a public hearing. It's up to them. Sound reasonable? Yeah, okay.
Cool.
All right. Did everyone get did we get something from the town attorney on the campus? Yeah, we did. Everyone got that to review. Jeff will be at our next meeting for our public hearing. That'll be on the 24th, correct?
That's scheduled for the 24th.
Okay. Tabled applications, Pinnacle Land Development.
That also is for your next meeting.
The
on
24th.
We have a long night on the 24th.
Yeah, great. Let's finish this quick. And then we have a bond,
Yeah.
road acceptance.
So I have a correspondence dated December 27th from the Director of Public Works and Engineering, recommending acceptance and the release of a maintenance bond. I have a motion for that.
Sure,
It's
can we hear
for,
that, please?
motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Town Council accept Farmers Court in its entirety as a town road on the map entitled Record Subdivision Map of Farm Meadows at Cook Hill, prepared by A.M. Napolitano, LLC, Cook Hill Road, Cheshire, Connecticut, which is recorded in the Cheshire Land Records as shown as map 4509. The acceptance by the Town Council should be conditional upon the recording of a warranty deed for the right-of-way and related legal documents as approved form and content by the town attorney. At the time of acceptance, the existing performance bond may be released and a maintenance bond in the amount of $40,933.63 be posted as per section 10.14 of the Cheshire Subdivision Regulations. And that number was determined by George, the Director of Public Works, for the maintenance bond.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Natale, seconded by Mr. Mercado. Any discussion on this motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Cudera, seconded by Mr. Natale, voted on by everybody.